not healthy. You know that.
I have been watching a lot of sunsets lately, and I do think about putting the sunset directly on my butthole. You heard about this before?
Sunning, yeah.
Yeah, sunning. So I'm not much better than Callum, but I don't do it on stage. I just have the funny thought when I'm watching the sunset.
I only know about that from Tom and Chad and JT. They're saying a bit about it. Yeah.
Just, we're just outing ourselves. We both have Callum thoughts all the time.
You know that, right? Are you guys cold plunging? Are you cold plunging? How are you? Be honest.
All right, then we'll say good morning. Let's begin. First of all, a thank you.
You guys look very inflamed. Everybody here
To our
listen.
sponsors this morning, both the breakfast are sponsored by the
Guys, you have to sit. It's gonna suck every morning after meditation, obviously, but just sit. Get an ice water. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna suck, but just stay there until you're sure you cannot have children anymore. That's when you know. Make sure everything is frozen. But here's the good news: go right into a sauna. Go right in. You want to go from the waters of the Arctic to Death Valley because that's natural. Yeah, and you sit in a sauna. Sit in there. I don't give you how hot should it be. It should be so hot it makes you a better person. Okay? Yeah, you should think about health. All right? Yeah. So those are the two non-negotiables. And by the way, balance. Balance. You all know this. This is I give my presentations are also full of useful information, and they are finding.
First joke.
Which was
My presentations are really useful information.
You fall.
I mean, literally was a joke, though.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not exciting.
I don't need to know how much you think about how hot guys are. That's not useful to me.
What if he did the Borat thing? He said that and he went, that's what he missed there.
What's up, Eric Flat?
When you fall in your 80s and you break your hip and die, it's because you had bad balance. And the reason you had bad balance is because you have weak toes. So you don't know this. You don't know this. It's amazing. We don't talk about toe strength. That is the most. You're working your whole body. You're doing nothing for your toes. That is so irresponsible. All right? Listen, if you're not running in heavy sand barefoot at least 3 days a week, I do not know what to tell you. I don't. And I can't stand here like, I don't live near a beach. I can't find sand. I have children and bills. Well, then, die in your 80s, you lazy piece of shit. Yeah, you want to live to 105. That's it.
That guy was not laughing at all. It was like Krakamika was not happy with the fucking does not give a shit.
He's studying the grade speed.
Yeah, he's about to write a rap. He's about to.
It also kind of looks like me, too. That's how I found out that's successful.
My fucking disguise is just blue light glasses.
Let your friends die at 85. You want to get to 105. Don't miss those 20 years. Yeah, that's a blast. From 85 to 105. Yeah. Can't wait to get to 100. Do you ever see what the average 100-year-old person looks like? You can't tell if they're male or female. Become involuntarily non-binary. That's what happens. 100-year-old people. Like your face looks like a used catcher's mitt. You're walking sideways like a crab. I won. I have strong toes. I ate kale. I sit in ice water. All my friends are dead. I'm a winner.
That's like Jim Burr.
That was very much like Jim Burr. Yeah. That's like if Jim Burr and Casey Rocker had a baby. What the hell was that?
Yeah, I would kill that baby.
Dad, I'm a winner.
That was a little too close to Jim Burr. That feels like thievery.
Keep talking about it again.
I think that because he's walking like Jim Burr does with a it's so much funnier with that sound. It's so funny that Callan's special is better without sound. Brian Callen, better without sound. You might laugh at this if you can't hear. The worst thing you could do to somebody that can't hear is put captions on this. Because they probably, just watching this, that guy is really doing sign like. I think my favorite comedian is Brian Callen. But have you ever heard him though, or seen? No, I haven't even seen the captions. Why do you ask? And then you go, okay, well, let's just real quick. We're gonna caption it. Okay, I'm very excited to see this. Well, then they're gonna end up cutting it. They're a week later. They're dead. They're dead. Okay, and it's not by someone else's hand or natural causes. That's all I'll say. All right. I'm the same as Kel. I'm doing the same. I'm gonna do the same thing over and over again. But I tell you, that one is funnier than the first. Cooney, it's okay to laugh at the part that we get it. You love that. Miguel, that's true.
I remember watching the first Rogan special as a kid and thinking he was a comedian. Now watching him and all his friends do comedy, this only hurts me.
Yeah.
Shared sentiment there, brother, and Dalton. Sometimes I forget he's doing this for comedy marks, and there are people that actually find it funny. I disagree. I think there's nobody that finds this funny. And like I said earlier, they're laughing at it at a certain point. It's like comedy used to be clever jokes from like, the greats. You know what I mean? Tap Van.
Ralph,
this is just like showcasing like psychosis. In a sense, it's like some fucking crazy person on stage just that can talk a mile a minute, and you're laughing because you're like, who thinks like this? Yeah, but it's not a clever who thinks like this. You know what I mean?
No, it's also very dated because a lot of what he does could be that old Howie Mandel episode where we watch it and we go, what the fuck is that? That's not funny at all. He's still doing a version of it. Yeah. His comedy hasn't changed since then. It's almost, I'm not realizing, derivative of that, which is bad.
This is like a Jelly Roll stand-up.
Actually, Jelly Roll probably would be better than this. With this one, which would help.
Yeah, he can go on stage. My dick don't work.
For your suffering boys.
Sounds like we don't get other stuff.
That's such bullshit. I'd rather die smoking than robbing a bank that's over. Right? Salads for cowards. The other thing is, though, what's funny is you can do everything right. This is the other thing you realize when you get older, you can do everything right. You can literally take your vitamins, you can wear your seatbelt, go to church, pay your taxes, give to charity, eat all the food that's good for you, and somebody can still step out of the shadows and kill you. Right? You can. That's a fact. That's the other thing social media reminds you of. Then you can die at any time of anything. I've seen cold to death. I didn't ask for it, but I've seen people die of every way you can imagine, every way. And I think they do that. I think the social media gods monitor our levels. I think they're like, his gods.
They're the social media gods. That's facts.
Callen has been doing stand-up since he was invented and produced. And he's never gotten better. He's smart, so he has to be aware of the audience's perceptions. And I agree, the Ringo Bobby is better than this. Oh, yeah, 100%. I lost where he was going. I was trying to keep up.
You can't have a fun time watching this. Well, except if it's like bullshit.
That's what I tried to say at the beginning. At the beginning, I was like, I don't know if you recall all the times I watched before, but eventually we are literally in pain.
Yeah, no, it's bad.
It's so weird that we look forward to a Callan special. But we do.
We gotta see. Even though it's bad, you want to like how, right? Is it really the same? How can it be the same? Right? It doesn't change at all. That doesn't seem possible. It reminds you somewhat that there is some truth to the people who change. Now, I disagree. I think people do change, but a lot of times they don't too. We're both ways change.
It's like watching a movie where the characters don't grow at all. It's like, really? You just watch the day in the life of this character and there's no growth.
Hard to grow when your job is that you work in a storage unit. He just railed to the podcast before he works and maybe lives in a storage unit.
Yeah, God's monitor our levels. I think they're like, his dopamine levels have been a little too high. Let's bring his cortisol and adrenaline levels up.
That's a great point. D is saying, how does he transition this back into animal sounds? Thank you for keeping us in check. We should be thinking this the whole time.
And like, how soon till that happens?
Yeah. And Kringleberry, what the fuck is up with his thumbs? We brought this up before on T-Mos. He does have strange thumbs. He's got an ability to hit that we will never.
What's up, Dallas? Prime giving Tony Roth for his money in the race for Gayest Man in Texas.
I like how that's the screenshot. Is the
Hungry Wolf on stage.
and where the comment pops up on the screen, it looks like he's like that rubbing his head.
Video of the escape circus elephant that stomped that poor guy to mush.
That's quick.
No, I did not. Dude, Elephant was not on my big move card for a Brian Callen special.
It'd be cool if he slipped in as a referee, like Elvin Graveyard.
Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna do that. Do you think he'll mention Rabbi?
I think he's done that before, right?
I didn't watch him where the next thing we're going to see Bears or Wolves. Okay, Bears, Wolves, or Dolphins. We got you guys on. We got the guy at Rabbi, the bookie. We got a tarantula box.
The bookies are racking.
Every count special media we read it had Subi highs by the last one. That's true. Yeah. Yep.
I know, you don't see it coming. You're just like, oh, I love elephants. Why is it shaking? It's tense so violently. It's unbelievable. I thought a guy was running away from a bird. I'm like, look at the pussy running away from the bird. I'm like, that's a fucking drone. They were doing video. These kids were capturing themselves sucker punching people. Sucker punching people on the street. I went nuts. I looked at my wife. I go, first of all, you're too relaxed. I need your head on a swivel. You're walking down the street. I want you, your hands up. I want you falling and breathing at all times.
See that?
Yeah, that might be way too much. Oh, this is great. It's so much better without sound. And the white, the guy, go back again. Watch. The guy that white, this guy is dead. He's for sure dead, too. 100%.
He's like, what the fuck? What you fucking eating? Okay, I'll stop. All right.
Breathing at all times. You know what I mean? My wife is like, the kids are opening their presents. Christmas can wait. But, by the way, I still box, I still keep myself, I'm always ready. And the other day, this is what happens. I was eating light.
That one was kind of funny. Like, not on purpose, of course. But that one made me laugh. I heard it. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't hear what he said. I still box. Oh, you box? Wow. Couldn't have done that. Shocking. Wow.
don't think I can take anymore.
I don't know if it's like,
Man, that was great. I still box. Everyone should have that fish daily special. I still box. That'd be fucking.
It's funny. I look at Callan and I know that he, just looking at him, I know that he doesn't say karate. He says karate every time. There's a kind of guy you can look at him and you go, "This is a guy that says karate," and thinks that it's funny.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But by the way, I still box. I still keep myself. I'm always ready. And the other day, this is what happens to me. I honestly go like, I'm rolling with this kid, 26 years old. This man's ankle. Get your ankle, bro. You can't just leave your ankle like that. I'm an ankle guy. You must have forgotten, you know. I paid that. I just got that. I scooped that up. Drove him right.
Just doing all the hits right now.
Yeah, it is weird how like he looks like a real stand-up comic.
He's very good.
What is he calling? Deaf guys like, what is he talking about?
And they have to guess, because if I didn't know the context, I would think that he was. This is my guess.
Yeah.
Actually, think of something, and then on three we'll both guess what he's doing. Okay, I'll count it off. Do you have something yet?
Oh, I was gonna watch it.
Yeah, watch it and let me know when you have something, but don't say anything. Just watch it.
Okay, I got it.
On three. Okay, we'll both say what we think he's doing.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, close. I thought it was a mechanic telling you why you did something else to your car. A lot is good, yeah.
I think I can see. Yeah, but that's what mechanic is like. You clutch. Yeah, you talk way more to your mechanics than I do. I'm like, hey, what is it? Yeah, they lie.
I grew up in a mechanic shop.
Well, that's true. You actually know.
I was a truck guy.
Yeah, yeah. No wonder it takes you 6 months to.
Being attacked by a mountain lion. Okay. So I was driving my truck and flipped it. Okay. White guy acting out his bad Spanish.
That up. Drove him right down the mat. Had an ankle sky high. And then I had trouble looking left for 11 days. Worked it. I'm just afraid I'm going to get bested by a younger, more symmetrical male. And my wife is young, and she's going to be like, it's just a business decision, I'll raise my kids under a different name. I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know. Like in my mind, in my fantasy, I'm going to be 85, still training. I'll be in the canyon, and some guy will be like, what's up, old man? And I'll be like, oh no, you chose the wrong grandpa. But you know what the problem is? The problem is, here's the problem. I'm starting to calcify, okay? Yeah, that's what they don't say. I don't care what you look like, I don't care what you do. Listen, you get to an age where if I have to fight for my life, if somebody attacks me on the street and I gotta go from 0 to 100 like that, I better be very warm and thoroughly stretched.
I love that one, dude. Christian Castillo said it looked like Brett Chris, that guy from Starbucks. That's pretty great.
I'll pull everything, bro. I have so many delicate spots. Don't worry about road rage. If I've been sitting in a car for more than 20 minutes, I can't just pop out of the car. I can't. I don't care. You could be beating my mother to a pulp, and I have to do my foot twirls. I have to. Dude, my Achilles will pop right off the bone. I'll be right there. I'll be right there. Put your feet in his hands up.
That's pretty funny. But it's like it's not funny right now. But I can understand how this could be funny for sure. It's so funny for that screenshot for you saying that this is funny. Or this could be funny. It's so good. That was my background on the computer.
He looks hilarious. He looks hilarious. And again, a scenario where Okay, you're trying to convince your friend. Should you go, no, this guy's different. This guy's very funny. He doesn't do any of that offensive stuff, okay? He's very, very clever. And they go, all right, well, let's see what he looks like. And they show him this. And they're like, fuck you. Fuck you. I'm not going to that. I'm not going to go live. What did you think of breakdowns at people scream. I was so damn late to the Gritty stream. Shout out to Brendan Muller. Welcome. No, but the idea of the joke is pretty funny. It's just he sucks. Oh, that picture is great. You should screenshot that and make your profile picture. Can you screenshot that and send it to me? I want to make that my Sora profile picture. Yeah, dude. Perfect. Doesn't get funnier than that. That's top tier right there.
So true, dude. I think the responsible thing to do now, I'm getting to an age where if I really want to be safe, I have to start.
All right. I like that idea from Walking Dead. Because you're always here, dude. And I'm sure he's donated a couple times. I'll do that. But tell me what, yeah. You guys should watch every 30 seconds. Not every 30 seconds, but one time. Watch with no sound. Guess the joke. Then the big part.
No, that's a good idea.
But yeah, it's okay. So, you know, you have a standing O. Right? So, at the end of a standing O, we'll do it. Last comment.
I want to start mimicking some of Callan's characters in real life. Like, I want to cook, right? I'll cook something, but I do the stuff that the salt guy, I just throwing spice, smoking pecan, just to make my fiance think I've gone insane. There's paprika all over the floor.
You will go ahead and go over up. So mostly everyone what's the problem with this? Never this was the problem. What's the problem? Hello, in the sack ball. Ella, I mean, what's the that issue? Was it very vulnerable moment. Right, but again, you look at this concept, you said, my gosh, I've been for years, you never realized it. The concept says, is that after Pesach Hashem, the Kachot sold to Baka. You will offer up to Zerach to a Pesach to Yisrael to God, sold sheep and Baka cattle. What's the fundamental problem? Chalak Pesach only comes from the sheep family, cannot be brought from cattle. The hello, in Pesach, Ba, Elam, and Akras, and we're not using. I was thinking, what's going on with that? Pesach only be Baka. What's Baka? Elam, the most Pesach, Shei, the Davar, Habon, Minat, Son, Minat, Baka. So what's the enough? You're right. The pasuk over here is not coming to talk about what we call real cover Pesach. What is it talking about? Most of them. This pasuk is referring to the little cover Pesach that could. Right. This is referring ultimately again to the cover Pesach ultimately again that was originally designated, but for reasons beyond its control was not actually offered up. What do you do with it? So what you do is you offer it up as a carbon from a combined category from which those sheep and cattle can be offered. Which type of carbon can be offered both in the form of sheep and cattle, which the Gemara says, "V'avoy elam b'kama moshe pesach shelidover hafam mi'atzolam min habokar." It can be offered up as a carbon or as an offering for a type of carbon that can be brought from the bakar. Remind you, and ultimately, again, what type of carbon is that? What's the mind? This is it. That is the drasha. That is the drasha. This is what Rambam also identifies as the drasha teaching that halachas of most of the time. So, for example, if you see the animal that's offered that is designated as a Pesach, not offered up as a Pesach, is brought as a carbon. What type of carbon? Type of carbon that should be brought ultimately again from the basma from the bakar. What type of carbon should be brought as a carbon from the bakar? It says flourish from it. Ella, Rossi Christ here, listen, this is very, very exciting. So, now it turns out that we have three speaking, all that teach us the same thing. All the three speaking teach us three different subjects, all that teach us the same basic halacha, which is that each of most subjects that is offered up as a father. That's what I will say. So now the obvious question is, why do I need to use blood for cooking? I'm just saying, it's wonderful, yeah, inside. But at the end of the day, it's just,
I've been stuck with some babies. I was thinking about it, and the Lord should know what the limits know it is.
Who the fuck shared this 22 times?
That's the bottom line. That's the take home message of all. You know, we're going to get into that shortly. But again, let's get most of it. And again, we've already seen that there are a number of different ways in which we can have a trouble and in most cases. Point is, now we offered up as a trouble. This is now the front of this way. The Gemara has in that three different justice, why do I need to see justice? Which Gemara said, what's the type of justification? Cut. The Eros Mano, Eroshka, also about a case of what? Eros Mano, where again, the celebration of a most why? Because it is not. And this is not. I need Arab Pesach, right? And this is what the Pesach. Or it was not. Or the animal was more than a year.
Yo, babies. All right. Welcome to day 28 of Coffee and Kabbalah and Coffee. And everything sucks. Are you surprised you've been doing this? 28 days? It's whatever. Alright. I have a quick story. So, the Discord yesterday, and they're like, normally people come in the Discord, I just want to fucking fight them. Just like, what the fuck did your, like, how dare you step into my fucking zone? It's like, dog, you're marketing this thing everywhere on the fucking internet. It's like, still, how dare you? I'm doing shit. And I'm like, how can I help you? And he's like, oh, look at this shit not working. Look at this shit not working. That's cool. Love when that shit doesn't work. Anyway, and the guy's like, how'd you find out about me? And he's like, actually, I was just on YouTube. And I saw it said, talk to a rabbi. Oh, yeah, right here, baby. And I'm like, all right, go ahead. What you got? He's like, well, I really wanted to talk about, like, mysticism and stuff, and I'm like, oh baby, that's what we do. Really? Yeah, I'm no way an expert, but bring it. And he's like, well, he had excellent question, and he was very knowledgeable. Man, this motherfucker might have been shouldn't have started his own fucking Kabbalah class because he was quite. So he's like, well, what kind of Kabbalah do you practice? It's actually known as Pimp Kabbalah, but it's the Pimp Kabbalah Chronicles, but it's whatever you want it to be. I didn't have the heart to tell him that, so I was like, oh, Cordovero and what is this bullshit? And Lurianic? I was like, damn, I fucking remembered that. And he's like, and then I go into Tanya, a little bit about Chabad, and he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, but, you know, it's kind of grounded on Moshe De Leon. He's like, oh, I'm well versed on Moshe De Leon. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm not teaching you too much. And then he talked about Simone Bar Yochai and he asks me about the world to come, which is an excellent question. It's a question I think, and frankly, nobody fucking knows, and I don't know too many rabbis that will just straight up tell you we don't. I mean, we should, we don't. But you know, we went into Shul, and 11 months of cottage for the righteous. I mean, I was giving him everything I had, and he's like, okay, what about the four worlds of Chabad? And I'm like, and he knew, I don't know if he was Jewish. He knew a lot about Kabbalah. He knew more than 99% of anybody you're going to ever meet on the street about Kabbalah. Fortunately, I just know slightly a little bit more, perhaps, or at least was able to give that out. And so I was able to answer his questions, and that was really refreshing to me because it was the first time anybody had ever asked me Kabbalistic questions, and I really felt like I knew what I was talking about because we do this every fucking day. I mean, we will have done like at least 28 hours on this bullshit. If you don't count the first like few ones that we did that were taking like 8 hours to fucking upload. So before he left, I was like, I told him like my story about, you know, why I stream and how much I stream and everything, and he's like, oh, there's another guy who does this. Whenever you hear that, all right, who? And he's like, oh, you can look him up on YouTube or whatever. And I do, and whenever this happens, my heart is just like, because I want to be the best. I am the best. I don't know anybody who's been doing this longer in the same way that I do. But I looked at this guy, and he does it in a similar way to the way I do. He's archiving his footage, which is really important. But then I saw how many days he's been doing it. Yeah, he's doing like a hunger strike too. And as you can tell, ain't no hunger strike going on here. But fortunately, and I don't know what his deal is, but he he's been doing it like 200 and some days, and I've been doing it like 1,500 days. Is that true? And I even think 200 days is a long period of time to be doing this. Like, I'm still like, I don't want anybody. I'm like boxing out. I'm the ultimate boxer out. Anyway, but like, I'm boxing motherfuckers out. All right, so let's see here. If I would have started this, I'd started on 10. I don't know. We'll see. What is this shit? 10/16, 2021, something like that. And we end it today. End it. Okay. Calculate duration. 1,561 days. That's a long period of time, folks. And this guy's not even at 300 days. But I didn't. I, I was proud of myself because whenever I don't know. There's like a, I don't know what, I guess it's humility, but whenever you've been doing, you see somebody doing something and you know it's important to them, and you just so happen to be doing something better than they have been, it's not a good idea to just come in and shit on them. And, isn't that what you did to that one girl who's been doing her stream for like 7 days or whatever? Or her. Yeah, but I mean, I just kind of had to clarify. And I had to give him the breakdown on the date, like on the time periods and things like that. But what the fuck is wrong with this shit? Is this still recording? Anyway, would I think I would have gone viral by now? Yeah, I thought I'd go viral in the first 3 months. This seemed like such a cool idea. But you've been doing it more than 1,500 days. Yeah. Do you think you'll have to do it 2,000 days before going viral? I think I'm going to go viral this spring. But I always say that. I don't know. So this other guy, and I would just say that person is very smart. I need a lot of support doing this. And it's, if you don't stream your life, this shouldn't be about streaming my life, but it was about Kabbalah. Okay, so I need to make it short because I could do that all day. All right, so then I went and checked out this other guy, and he's been doing his stream for 200 some days. And I didn't go into, I tried chatting with him, but I totally get it. You don't pay attention to a chat when you're doing it this long. You're just doing your own thing. And he didn't have like other stuff going on. It was just him, which is cool, but I think it's cool to have like the world news events. I think that's super important. And music and singing and things like that. That to me makes this. And I know the topics about which I discuss are really, really important. And I am communicating with other people. He did not seem to. Maybe the one guy said that sometimes he saw the other guy talking to some people, but I don't know. I mean, he just seemed. And here's the thing. Here's the kicker. He's on one stream, and while that isn't important, you can't really see him from the waist up too much. I mean, you can see my legs. Like that's going to be studied in the future, and you can. I'm on just so many different streams that I feel like that's really important too. And but that does not mean that 200 and whatever days is not. I mean, we'll call it whatever 300 days. That's really an accomplishment. And I try to get a hold of him because I'd love to have him in here. That would be, in some ways, a dream to be able to combine our forces. And he's about world peace, and I think that's amazing too. So I'm going to try to get a hold of him later today. Right, is that at the end of your fucking story? Because for now, but shout out to the guy who came and stayed and discussed Kabbalah. That guy was very knowledgeable. Shout out to the other guy who's doing the thing for world peace. 200 days is a long time. All right. Now look. Oh, and I started listening to Chabad videos when I went to bed, and I actually didn't hate it. I was learning as I was falling asleep. I really like the one on the Beta Mikdash. That shit's tight as fuck. Alright, so Yiddish words. Let's go, folks. Down, that's what you say after we fuck. After we high five. It's something so pleasurable it could revive the dead or add years to one's life. B'chai, the Hebrew word that means giver of life.
automatically
Alright,
shows
guys.
you what type of mincha
Next,
you offer.
Halabai,
Even if your kavana was
Halabai,
different, your
if
kavanas
only or I wish.
are irrelevant
Uh,
because it's your action that's going to say, you really kind of a Muslim in this.
let me
So
watch
look
that
at the Gemara says,
motherfucking thing.
So the Gemara says, Shakometz mach was the shem akashas.
You know, though,
Even if one took the mitzvah, the shem minchas, like one took the mitzvah of
if only
mincha
or I wish.
machas, and you had in mind that it should be for the machashas, maaseh mochichim alesh machmas. His actions
So, like,
show
do you want the Beit HaMikdash to be built? Yeah, Halabai. There you go. Alright, what's the other one? Yiddishakop, that's Jewish head. Yanta means a talkative bitch. Tacheles is our one for today.
You don't really care what you're thinking because your actions say what it says. It's an incredible Muslim. And you can have all the
What does tapas mean? Tapas is a Yiddish word that comes from Hebrew, where it means end, entirety, ultimate, or purpose. King David uses this word in Psalms, where he describes his feelings for evil versus tapas of hatred. Applied in this context, it means ultimate. A classic use of this word is the Hebrew adage, the tapas of knowledge is to know that we cannot know equally to its case. The word quite clearly means purpose. An example in Catholic literature is the description of Jesus given in like setting down to no tablets. Point 3 in this case, it is best interpreted as end. One famous chastic use of tablets in Italian, where we read that the tablets of humankind, in all the worlds, is that Gigi should have such a dwelling place here below. 4. In common Yiddish parlance, the word tablets can also refer to real world action, utility, practicality, or usefulness. Talking tablets can be a no-holds-barred conversation about life's major decisions, such as settling down a profession, spouse, etc., or identifying purposeful goals in life.
So it's like brass tacks. Let's get down to brass tacks. Alright, Tacheles. That's tight. Now what? Well, now we're gonna do more Kabbalah. Actually, no, before we do that, let's learn what the folklore is.
Actions themselves portray which type of product you're offering. Different sacrificial subs. That's why again,
Do they have a thing that reads this? Like, come on, Chabad, I've donated to you. You could use that money to fucking get your shit together. Really? Yeah, Nissan. Come on.
Already show it that coming
We shall now examine in detail the different stages of the chain core of creation, one sense of and created the vacuum within which finite creation could come about. In order to describe these stages and draw their comprehension closer to our understanding, we shall use an analogy from Elder. Imagine a couple has an idea that they want to build the ideal house for themselves and their family. The idea started totally out of the blue. In a flash, they had a picture in their mind of a statement of population home with gardens and a pool. Relishing such an idea, the couple then sat down and worked out the entire structure in their mind by visualizing each bedroom, dining room, kitchen, garage, etc. In the mind, the initial idea has been developed in breadth and depth. After such a beautiful dream, they can easily delete the entire image from their mind. However, to carry the idea further, they have to get emotionally excited about the idea. The couple must then call an architect and a builder and start putting the initial idea on paper. Once the plans have been drawn up, our couple then has to look into the practicalities of buying the plot of land, applying for building permission, financing the project, and the actual building of the house. All the other months of work on the house can finish, and our couple may then enter the home to their dream. We can delineate 4 stages in this process. 3. Emotional involvement in drawing the actual plans. 4. Practicalities building. The couple explains that these 4 stages will also use the creation of the world.
As long as
The first stage is the overall concept. The first level is implementation of the initial stage, which is separating the manifest. This level is called manifest. The word outside comes from the Hebrew word which means next to, or at from. This world is the next stage after the sense of divine song. Once the possibility for finite creation had been made possible through the sense of, it was then possible to delineate different features or attributes of GD. The 20 uses different Hebrew names for GD. They are, in fact, names that describe the different separates. For example, the name describes G-Guinness as manifested in separate chest. Elliot describes G-Guinness as manifested in separate gender, and so on. The world of absolute is still within reality infinite. Ancient is separate, world of absolute is infinite. The novelty of the world of absolute is the delineation between the attributes. Each one becomes identifiable in its own right. Previously, although the possibility for their creation existed, it was totally obscured by divine song. In the world of absolute, all that can be felt is divine. There is yet no independent existence. Each of the 4 stages of creation corresponds to one another in the tetragrammaton. G is further being gravity. The world of absolute corresponds to the letter yod. This letter is shaped in the form of a dove. It is also the letter which all other letters are in sync. It is the quintessential form which all further existence may develop. As explained earlier, the letter yod also corresponds to the separate chakra. Although all 10 separate are present in every world, one separate, or group separate, is predominant in each stage. The dominant separate in the world of absolute is chakra. The world of absolute is the reading potential for further creation. In the next stage, the initial concept is worked out, and plans for the creation are further developed. Within the mind, the building has taken on some form of independent existence. Something has been created, albeit only in theory. This world is called the world of Rabbi or creation. same process. And you had in mind for the wrong carbon, then what? The mincha will be constant. But why? Why don't you make the same reduction by income as you made by chatos? And chatos will say, those chatos, as long as you had in mind for some chatos, even if it's a different kind of chatos, your chatos is kosher. Why don't you say the same thing by mincha? Because it says those chatos on mincha, say what? As long as you had in mind for the right type of food, for some kind of mincha, the cover is going to be. Yes, you must have to say that. You must have the only reason why we have a mincha with a broad mindset is kosher is because the aseh mochi. And I'm out. We eat my house. I don't know.
Alright, that was tight. No one knows what the fuck that means. Really? Really? I kind of get it, like a house or some shit.
For someone who was alive, who was like Nakshon and Aminadab, and the cover would be possible. Who enters this? What is that? Okay. The instruction of the Shia Bailam Hashem on the if I accepted the cover ultimately again for someone who was alive, who is the Nakshon, who is like Nakshon, who is like Nakshon, Shemukulu Tatos, She'ina Akum. So if I'm offering up a cover time, so again, just because I have to do the cover time. I do something else to cover time. I'm not offering it up, but I'm accepting it, except I have in mind for someone who's alive who would have brought a cover time like Nakshon and Aminadab. Who is the living person who has been in a cover time like Nakshon and Aminadab? There was a certain kind of cover time that's not brought for a sin. Who is tied to not for a sin. As long as sin not something goes happens, doesn't sabotage. So what's the case? What's the case? Was it the case that we have come up and have a cover time? But when I get to have in mind for someone else, what type of pathos, not like my pathos, but a pathos like that from another. So what's a pathos not like that from another? Sin offering that's brought but not for a sin. So what's the case of someone who's trying to come a pathos but not trying for a sin? What's that case? Remind you, pathos nazir, pathos mitzvah. So the case would be like a pathos offering of a nazir, or a pathos offering of a mitzvah. What you said, people, for a mandate for pathos, but it's called a pathos, but it's not a real sin act. So we'll say, what God teaches me is as follows. If I go ahead and as a shefty and carbon pathos, I have in mind that it's the heat, the shame, the common moving. Well, what type of pathos is moving after me? Moving was a Rashi, or was a Rashi, moving was a Soda. And he's moving like he has a feeling for a pathos offering as well. We'll say that that pathos is still materials that conduct electricity will be transparent. Those that are resistant will be opaque. Salt water will be clear. Fresh water will be murky. If you were to take in place of the warmth of the sun, then will rise. Your home will be dominated by the radiant warmth of the closest mammal. The aroma that guides your life will be that of bacterial acid and mammal perspiration. And the most significant landmark in your environment will be not a tree or farm, but the stroke of a hair upon an animal's hide. Not because you don't care about the sun, the sky, the trees, and the earth. They simply do not exist in your world. All these worlds reside within the realm of civilization. But let's say you're Maimonides describes angels as intellects without bodies. On the Kabbalists disagree. Angels have bodies, just the bodies are not of anything you would call a soul to. That which we know is not real for an angel. Only ideas are real. In the world of ideas, time and space have very different sorts of boundaries. Ideas overlap, merge, and move out in entirely different ways. That which we know is not real for an angel. Only ideas are real. Our world, just such a very beings, could be quite less than so much more so. Why?
Angels are relative to the earth altogether. And beyond the angel sort of world is yet higher. The other very beings, from the angel's world as much as the angels are removed from ours. And so the spectrum of worlds extends higher and yet higher. Yet, all these creatures share a single reality. All their worlds are governed by the same patterns and rules, even the worlds of angels and beyond, albeit in a more abstract form, as we mentioned later. Each creature learns in its unique way that a single reality lies beneath everything experienced by all of us.
But if I
So is that shared reality a real world? It would be, except that a common reality we all share, but one experience can hardly be called a world. The only one who knows that reality from the inside is its creator.
my
The world instead naturally delineate four degrees of perception. A world, it turns out, is very much artifacted subjective perception one brings someone. Human refined senses can experience a higher world, as was the case in the ancient prophets, as well as with many of the great secular intellects. And when something has become imperceptible in one world, it has left that world, perhaps to appear in another world. The world instead actually delineates four degrees of perception. World within you. This would be very difficult for us to grasp, for another world size also contain multiple strata realities. At times, we live in our thoughts, and other times in our words, and at times, just within the sensations of the physical world. Try taking a virtual trip through those strata of perception. You fall deep into thought, wondering the answer. The world around you vanishes. For a moment, you don't know how long. You stand still, immersed in a world where events that span many decades in places distant from one another merge into a single frame. You are no longer in the bar. You are reliving the emotions and the thoughts you felt through those times. You just each speak and respond to your friend, which you do quite well. You articulate that vision of yours as best you can, all that you perceive in those feelings and notions. You're never going to be satisfied with your articulation. It is nevertheless flattening the world into words and phrase it in careful sequence, because if you would speak everything out at once the way it just occurred to you, your friend would be completely lost. You just slip down into your world of speech. And now the two of you trudge onward along the world's path. You feel the breath of the dry bottom waves beneath your feet. You begin once again aware of the rhythm. All air as the daylight begins to dim. The shadows lengthen, the colors fade into darkness. Your legs begin to tire. You never return to your world of sensations and physical activity. Of course, all this time you never really left. The worlds are transmitted via virtual waves in the gaseous atmosphere. Even your thoughts are limited to representations within space and time, and now that you perceive them, you're sucked down in the world of physical sensation. You dissociate into a rarefied atmosphere of your mind. But at least you have a moment within you, a world of language, and especially the world of thought, where you use to comprehend the invisible effortlessness within habit. The more worlds you live in, some of it that takes the entire world within the human heart before your psyche, some of it runs in the universe. And a lot of creatures reside within thoughts, words, and actions where human would find. Of course, divine thoughts are not human thoughts. They are never seen with the eye. You think about things that you have seen with your eye. You can't imagine a baby goat standing on a gray elephant, or a big elephant standing on a gray flamingo. But with a mindless imagination, you would never imagine a color you've never seen, or a sound you've never heard. With a mindless imagination, you would never imagine a color you've never seen, or a sound you've never heard. Before Genie thinks of an animal, there are no animals to think about. He comes up with colors, light and darkness, time and space entirely out of nowhere. Before he begins, there is nothing at all to think about other than his own existence. He thinks not about ways, but about what desire should be. The same divine speech. You can't tell a great story, but if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. You can't develop your characters so artfully that your audience feels like they met these guys, but none of those characters will leap out of your mind, turn around, and shake your hand for creating them. Genie, on the other hand, says, let there be light, let there be a world. The world exists as though it always was. Nevertheless, there are parallels between our thoughts, our words, our actions, and beings. And those parallels allow us insight into worlds entirely beyond us. At the top of the hierarchy is a world that's holy, so let's start there. As well,
So again,
as well also has a parallel in human psyche, in your actions, your words, and your thoughts. There lies you, the person who thinks those thoughts, speaks those words, and performs those actions. What drives all beings? Your mind and your heart. It can hardly be said to have time and space at all, other than in a very abstract sense. It can be relevant vertical coordinates on a graph. Or how you hold those wrong concepts in your mind. There's a bunch of things, but they're there all at once. Things can be in different spaces, but it's a single whole. As much as your thoughts turn, and thus, your inner self doesn't change much. Beneath all the swings of mood and tempo, you remain the same you. That's why Benjamin is also called a world of oneness. Nothing has yet been created. The elements necessary to construct a world are there in latent potential, like a seed underground yet to emerge. Everything that ever really exists there is a single whole. In that way, mentally, is not truly a world. It is intermediary stage between infinite, unbounded light and finite, divine creations. It is called, quite paradoxically, the place where infinity ends and the possibility of finite begins coexist. Perhaps it can be called the world of love, or even think about it in a world. And yet, nothing confines it there whatsoever. Even as he creates this world and breathes life into it, he remains entirely beyond all. Uriah, a world of creation. But then comes Uriah, the world of thought. Thoughts are amazing. Not intelligence or raw intellect, but the articulate words and imagery that shatter busily your mind. They are the landscape of your consciousness. You observe them and know who you are, what you are thinking, and how you feel. Your thoughts are you, but they are not you. They are articulations of what's going on inside you. And that is what is so amazing. Because there are no words inside you. There is emotion. There is intelligence. But words, they're difficult to follow. Conjuring those thoughts in your mind is by far the most creative thing you do. It's the closest you come to creating something from nothing. And in this way, your inner world of thought provides a window on the first iteration of creation, the world of Uriah. Imagine yourself as a thought in GD's imagination. You are aware that you are only a fantasy, that you arose out of the void. You perceive your own existence, and cannot help but wonder how such a thing is possible. How can anything else exist? The world of Uriah is not GD. The inner perception of its tendency, all that really exists there is GD. That's because Uriah is only the very beginning of existence. It is existence without form. Or think of it this way. Just as your personal world of thought is a very private space, isolated from all others, so too the world of Uriah is a private world for its creator. Your thoughts are not you, but the only one creating them is you. The world of Uriah is not GD. The inner perception of its tendency, all that really exists there is GD. Yetzirah, a world of forms. The world of Yetzirah, in stark contrast, is a world similar to your experience of communication with others. Communicating, unlike thinking, is all about the other. When you have difficulty acknowledging that those listening to you are not anything, and feel to communicate, you will have a hard time communicating. Yetzirah means creation. This is a world in which the substance of existence takes form, occupies its own space, and thereby emerges from the subliminal into a being. Yetzirah, then, is the first instance of a world that leaves room for its creatures to feel their own space and existence. This is a world in which the substance of existence takes form, occupies its own space, and thereby emerges from the subliminal into the revealed. And yet, in Yetzirah, time and space still do not have the sharp definition that treating physical creatures are familiar. Just as the meanings of words overlap, bend, and change according to context, so the granules of time and space exist all at and blur together with fluidity. In any one moment of Yetzirah, it is said, its 10 cents can perceive some 15 years ago time once a minute. So, if you are a creature in the world of Yetzirah, you have a much stronger sense of yes, I exist in human Uriah. On the other hand, you feel that you are, but an expression of something beyond you, just as words express the mind, and heart represents speaks them. You can be sure you bear the transcendent infinite beauty of life. And you would eventually hear more of that like that energy. This is the world of angels, and their songs when needed is also the world to which most of the prophets ascended to receive their prophecy. Through asceticism and disciplined training, they were able to divest themselves of their physical senses and tune into spiritual reality. They can perceive a world where divinely praise may be heard before they come to material lives there below. To an angel, a thought is a laugh that reveals a spoken word. The prophets and their ascent to this world, you will hear tumultuous songs of angels. Indeed, to one with such fine senses, the thoughts of human beings read much louder with melody. Messiah, the natural world. The world of Messiah is the universe we perceive with our physical senses and devices. It's the world where creator is most hidden, as though this world is here just because it is here, and always is here. Not because it says something or means something.
Or you enter into the days of repetition, a state of tumult, the same columns, and therefore should be higher, or therefore again, maybe the covenants from God, or Yoma, aim Kavua columns. Oh, yes, I watch this. Tumas Mutash, the Kadash Shabosai, that is a carbon all that we know. Same conscious all that we know.
Indeed, most denizens of this world are not at all bothered by the question of how they got here or why we just are. Messiah means an action such as throwing a rock or kicking some pebbles. Thoughts and words carry meaning, and action is just a thing that happened. If you hear words, you know they came from someone and they carry information. If you see a rock flying through the air, the only information you have is that a rock is flying through the air. Messiah is a world where each thing says, I am here, and where I am, nothing else can be. Messiah is also a world of high definition. Fundamentally, Messiah is where one thing is, another cannot be. For one to begin, another must end. Your hand cannot go through the table without at least one of the two breaking. No two things may share the same space and the same momentum. Messiah is a world where each thing says, I am here, and where I am, nothing else can be. Yet it is this world that the soul descends to do mitzvahs and learn Torah, because only here, when divine light is most concealed, are we granted enough to our own spectacle, to our own space, to make our own decisions and for our own free choice. And only through making those decisions in the darkness, in a place where failure is always a possible outcome, can growth, change, and transformation occur. This is why all the higher worlds, the many realms within Yetzirah, Bara, and even Absolute, so much depend on our thoughts, words, and especially our actions down here in the world of Asiya. In that way, the lowest world is truly the highest, beyond worlds. Beyond all that, The Kabbalists will tell you it lies infinite life in the soul, baby. Unbounded and identified, no rules, no patterns, nothing that can be known at all. And from where does this light emanate? From God Himself. Where is God? Everywhere. As the Zohar repeats again and again, He fills all worlds, He encompasses all worlds, and there is nothing else. Alright, well, that was a cool story. What are the four worlds? No, it's just like a third. Whatever. Why? It's just like super. Why? Shit.
Therefore, it's not similar enough to my own fashion and consumption of the
That's cool. But like, what does that have to do with aliens? What is that? I don't know why I have to go to the bathroom. I think I do. Why? Hey kid, how's that butt, Boba? Shrinking every day, bro. Alright. Allegedly. Maybe I'm just being funny. Alright. Alright, so he wrote Sefer HaBarit, a work on the Kabbalah. Moses Borderell quotes this work in introduction to his commentary on Sacred Zero. Great Menuna, Covenant of the Rest, another work on the Kabbalah, valued highly by Isaac Luria for its profound comments, his language, as well as how Shimon ben Yochai is introduced as speaker, showing a striking resemblance to the Zohar, and it may be that the author had a larger version of the Zohar before him than is now extant. Unlike the Zohar, however, Berit Menuha is primarily focused on the practical Kabbalah and the powers of divine names and angels. Megale Ta'alamo, quoted by the author in the work previously mentioned. It's cool. Who are these guys? 13th century Kabbalistic commentary.
All right, I want to say good morning, or good Tavach. A great is the first Baruch Hashem to be able to begin this last week of Tafshin Pei Hey with learning together Meshach HaSivach. And begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our annual commentator sponsor, the Token Mishpach about itself for dedicating all the training doctors this year and gives close to the son of Toros to Am Yisrael. Our commentator sponsors for the month of 16th century onward, but his works continue to be highly esteemed and were published in many editions. His writings reflect the numerous intellectual currents that converged in Castile in the last third of the 13th century and formed a unique milieu for Jewish mysticism in the late Middle Ages. His works, especially his major work, Shari, Gates of Light, before 1293, had a profound influence on the later development of both Jewish and Christian mysticism. In different manuscripts of the work, the author's name is variously referenced. Then Ashapin Kasiton the Rafa and his mother take a razor bath jelly and the whole that all the kilos of our entire kilo and body will be entered in the father of the Al-Islam, Yitzchak Aryeh Ben HaKavar Yaakov Zichron Rafa, and Gadi and Shem Cohen, and the Ilui Nishmas, Gadi's grandmother Eleanor Cohen, Elka Bas Binyamin Tzvi, whose Yartzeit is Jenny, we hope them the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of them is Shama Savinari, the family name is Kamo, all of those who need for Shalom Killers, Cold Color, Yisrael, Kulisov, Shinyas, Shinyas, Homer, Ashtikis, Shalom, and the Torah, the Laura, all these soldiers, these sensible Homer, Ashi, Zayden, is Rizal Kemes, and she's all cars that are sealed, and that's in the so with that, let us begin. Today's daf is daf Zion, and then start to the lift of beginning us to the two daf on 7a. Itzmar, told us to Shachta Litim, told us Havila. So it's a very interesting piece over here. What happens if Havachal Maisa? So again, a Toda is Shachta for the sake of someone else's Toda. Now remember again, this is not Shachta. Good. So you're just talking during Shir. That's what's happening over here. Okay, good. So come on, people, get it together. So the Gemara says as follows. Remember again, this is not a case of Shinoi Bailing. Right? Because Shinoi Bailing is a little bit different. This is actually a very unique case. So over here, we're talking about a situation. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says, Toda sheshachat l'shem todas chavero. Rashi says, Lo sheshachat amrash is kafet dami she'eno ba'alel. There's not been like a case where the Toda is shechted ultimately against to atone for someone else who's not the owner. This is what's the case. Shahisa Ruben Toda, or Yeshimon Toda, Eres, the Shachat Es Toda, Toda, so the Shem Zet, Toda, Shazat. So that's a very interesting case. In this case over here, both Ruben and Shimon are Chayiv a carbon Toda. Toda is just the example. The actual carbon itself is not all that important. Right? But the idea is both Ruben and Shimon are Chayiv a carbon Toda. And what ends up happening over here is that Ruben. Then the Kohen Shechting Ruben's told up. When Ruben's told up, he has in mind for Shimon. So the difference is, again, at the end of the day, both of these individuals are Chayve carbon told up. What's the status? Rab Amar Kshira, so Rabbi says it's kasher. Rav Chisda Amar Psula, and Rav Chisda says that it's possible. That it's possible. Now, what I want to point out over here is something very interesting. Kshira, in this case over here, means not only is the carbon kasher, but what? It counts to satisfy the obligation of the particular owner. Right? That's what Kshira means in this case. So Rabbi says totally good. Rav Chisda says it's possible. Rabbi Amar Kshira, Rabbi says that it's good. Why? Because Rabbi says, listen, at the end of the day, what happened over here? The Toda was shechted for the sake of Toda. In other words, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Ruben needed a Toda. Shimon needed a Toda. So ultimately, again, two Todos get slaughtered. So we're good to go. We're good to go. Granted, there was a little bit of a mix-up in terms of whose Toda is who, but practically, it shouldn't really matter. Rav Chisda Psula, Rav Chisda Psula, the Shlomim Didei Nishchat Ba'inar. So Chisda says no, because at the end of the day, Halacha L'Maisa, Rav Chisda calls this a Shinui Kodesh. He calls this at the end of the day, in order to discharge your obligation as a carbon, the carbon itself has to be offered for the sake of the particular, exclusively the sake of the particular owner. So fundamental machlokes. So it says, so Rabbi says, how do I know? The Rebbe says, I just want to point out, just in this case, and a typical Shinui Bailim. Right? In a typical Shinui Bailim is Reuben's bringing the Toda, and the Kohen has in mind for Shimon. Now Shimon has no shaykhs to a Toda. Shimon's just a regular guy minding his own business. That's the typical case of Shinui Bailim. What's unique in this case over here is Reuben and Shimon are both chayiv to bring a carbon Toda. So whereas, again, the carbon should have been shechted for Reuben, it was shechted for Shimon. Rabbi says, listen, at the end of the day, it was shechted for the sake of Toda. Both of these individuals are chayiv Toda. No harm, no foul. We're good. Rabbi Chisda says, no, that's not true. In order for a carbon to ultimately discharge the obligation of the owner, it has to be explicitly slaughtered for that owner. So, Rabbi says, how do I know that this carbon is kosher? So ultimately, again, Rabbi calls this pasuk, and interestingly enough, what we're going to see over here is that halacha l'maisa. So the Torah calls a carbon toda a shlamim. What does this come to teach us? It teaches us an important halacha, namely that if a toda is shechted for the sake of a shlamim, ultimately again it's kasher. Ultimately it's shechted for the sake of a toda. It's puzzle. Now why is that? So why when it's good? But ultimately, again, shlamim shechted for the sake of a toda is puzzle. Very simply, Gemara says, Toda kriya shlamim. Because in the pasuk itself, the Torah calls a toda a shlamim. Shlamim is not called a toda. So we'll say, by the way, it's actually very logical. Because again, essentially, a toda is a category of shlamim. So therefore, if you go ahead and you shecht a carbon toda for the sake of shlamim, the carbon is good. But to go ahead and shecht a shlamim for the sake of toda is not good. So Gemara says, "Vein shlamim kriyin toda, shlamim l'shem toda, psula, ha toda, l'shem toda." So what can you infer from here? You can infer from it like this. What's the disqualification? If you shecht a toda, if you shecht a shlamim I'm sorry, there's no green Toda. Shlamim is L'Shem Toda Psula. So what do you see from here? It's when you shech Shlamim for the sake of Toda that it is possible. But what can you infer? HaToda L'Shem Toda Sheira. But if you shech to the Toda for the sake of Toda, it's kosher. That sounds pretty intuitive. Right? Thinking, what's the concept here? My love the Chavrei. So we're not talking about a case where both Reuven and Shimon are both private Toda, and you accidentally shech Reuven's Toda for the sake of Shimon. And what do you see from here? That it's still kosher. To which the Gemara says, no, maybe not.
When only 26.
Maybe not
It is a
about the
Kabbalah
Chavrei
treatise.
line, but maybe someone come out his own Toda. So what happens on the most side? If you want to cover the
Which
Toda,
means garden
cover
amounts
Toda must be
Kabbalistically
exclusively
cannot.
shechted for
Garden
the sake of
consists
the actual owner.
of the initials
What's
of the
about the
matrilineal
Chavrei line? But what happens if you shecht Reuven's Toda
Avricum
for the sake
into
of
the three
Toda?
variants
Rabbi is Psula. So here, Rabbi wants to bring this full proof, right? Rabbi wants to show that it's
the first
only
part in
dafka
5 chapters
when you
treats the
shecht
various names of God,
a
according to the Hebrew
shlamim
Bible,
for
according
the
to
sake
the
of Toda that is possible. But if you were to shecht Toda for the sake of Toda, so to speak,
which
then
represents the
it's kosher.
substance of the
What's the case of Toda for
other
the
names
sake of
related
Toda? Oh, it
predicates
must be
of the
Reuven's
divine
Toda
attributes. The
for the sake of Shimon. Both the
tetragrammaton
Toda. That's going to be kosher.
stand
But
God
says,
as
no,
he is.
man,
Wow.
who says?
The evening
Who says? Maybe the
denotes God
halacha
as
actually
the
is
creative power.
that at the end
name,
of the day, when you shecht,
the T,
one person told the another told the ultimately again it's
that
possible.
applies to all
If
beings
that's
of
the
three
case,
natures.
that's true. At the Shlamim L'Shem Toda Psula,
Applies to
and instead
all
of
the
highlighting
beings
the
of
case of
three
Shlamim,
natures, earthly,
that's
heavenly,
shechted for
or
the sake
spirit
of
and
Toda, that's going to be
spiritual.
possible.
Interpretation
This
of
needs
this
Toda,
prayer.
even when you shecht
The second
Toda for
part
the sake of
treats the
Toda.
letters of the
What's the
alphabet.
case of Toda for the
He
sake of
declares
Toda?
that the number
I
10
shecht
emanated from the
Reuven's
tetragrammaton
Toda
of the
for the sake of
pyramidal
Shimon's Toda.
cause
Say that case is
and
possible.
the source of
And
all
if that's
things.
going to
He
be possible,
attempts
then
to
what?
prove the statement
The
by
Kol Shekin
different
Shlamim L'Shem
combinations
Toda.
based
All
on
the more
religion,
so, we'll say, if you
philosophy,
shecht the
physics,
Shlamim for the sake
mysticism.
of a Toda,
He
of course
shows
that's
that
going
the
to be possible.
Talmudic
So in other words,
view
if
that
Toda
space
L'Shem
is filled
Toda is
with
possible,
spirits
then of course
agrees with the
Shlamim
belief
for the
of the
sake of Toda is going to be
philosophers
possible. To which the
that
Gemara
there is
said,
a
I'll tell you why.
He also
Shlamim
treats
L'Shem
here
Toda Didei,
of the
it's not true. The
revolutions
truth
of the
is,
sun
we
and
really
moon,
need to highlight the
giving
case
the
of Shlamim
relative sizes
for
of
the
the
sake
planets.
of Toda.
The third
Why?
part is a
The Gemara
treatise
says,
in 4
Saturday Kamina,
chapters.
I would have
One
thought,
involves the
me, the
three-pointed
Toda Kuya Shlamim,
Osholem
since the
Shura,
Toda is called the
who
Shlamim, that's what we just saw in the
represents the
concept
upper,
before.
middle, and lower realms,
Shlamim,
the three
Nami
compound
Kuyin Toda.
Seri, the
Ultimately,
cycle,
again,
and
Shlamim is
Shiva
also called Toda.
represent the
I would have
composition
thought
of the
that this is a
construction of
reciprocal
the lips, the
relationship.
pota,
Just as
and
Toda
tongue
is called
represent
Shlamim,
their
so perhaps
movements.
Shlamim is called Toda, and therefore,
Sharet Aura,
if you shachet Lahu
content and
L'Shem
style. Sharet
Toda,
Aura
L'Chshu,
deals with the
and
names of
therefore,
God according to the
so
commentary
when you
of
end up shechting
the
Shlamim for the sake
Megathaya,
of Toda,
Ben
it should be
Solomon
kosher.
Stellar.
Kamash
It
Malan, it
discusses
is
300
not.
names
Kamash
organized into 10
Malan, so we'll say
chapters, one
it is not.
for each
Jacob will say it
sphere.
just so what comes out
Each
over here?
sphere
So first
has
of all,
one
just the
primary
facts
name,
as we know it. The
but may
facts that
have
we have is
many other
if you end up
sub-names or
shechting
associated
Toda
with one
for the
sphere.
sake of
The
Shlamim,
purpose of the book
it's
is so
kosher.
that you can understand
It's
the
kosher.
experience of
I
the
remember
fountain of
again,
the living waters.
general thought, what does
The
kosher mean?
fountain of
Kosher
living
means
waters.
the carbon is
Jeremiah
affected, but
chapter
what?
13.
It does not count towards
That
the
flows from
owner's
all his names,
obligation.
and when
If
you
you
attain
shech
this, then you will
Shlamim for the sake
prosper
of Toda,
and
carbon
have good
is
success.
invalid. What happens if you go ahead and both Reuben and Shimon are both private carbon Toda, and you end up shechting Reuben's Toda for Shimon or Shimon's
So
Toda for
there's
Reuben?
Keter,
That's a
Kami.
machlokes. Rabbi says it's
I don't know.
kosher.
I don't know
Rav
what
Chisda
to
says it's
Chachma,
possible.
Bina,
Okay, let's go back to
Chesed, Gevurah.
Rabbi case.
So
Chata
Keter,
shechach
Kami,
Shem
Chachma,
chatos
wisdom, Bina, understanding,
shera. So what's the interesting case of this? Rabbi says
Chesed,
we
kindness,
actually saw this
Gevurah,
before.
severity, Tiferet, beauty,
So Rabbi says if you shech to the
Seth,
chatos for the sake of a
Trinity,
chatos.
victory,
Now what's that
God,
case? If you look
splendor,
at
Chesed,
Rashi in the wide
foundation,
lines, 4 lines in.
Mafu,
Chatos sheshach l'shem chatos kigon.
other words,
Chatos
Sha'arei
chelev
Sedek or
shemishchata
Sha'arei
l'shem
I am
chasdam.
another
So what's
treatise
the
by
interesting case?
Jacob
I
on the
ate
10th
chelev
square,
and I
Yevadi,
ate dam.
Trental,
It's a
1567,
bad
Sefer
day.
HaNikul,
It's a bad day. I
mystical
ate chelev and
explanation of
I ate dam.
Nicodemus,
So that's 2 different carbon
included
chatos. So what
with
happens?
the
Let's say
Arse
again,
Button,
some reading both these words, but they were mixed
Sad
up. They were mixed up. Right? So
Ashmal,
therefore, again, I end up,
Kabbalistic
or the coin
commentary
ends
on
up,
the vision
offering my
Ezekiel
chatos for Caleb
also printed
or my
with
chatos
the
for
Arza
Dan.
Lebanon
Gotcha. Okay, we'll see why that is.
1600
L'shem
Sadad
Ola Psula. But interestingly
Well,
enough,
the
if my
Kabbalistic explanation of
chatos
650
is offered
commandments.
up for the
The great
sake of an
Kabbalistic
Ola,
essays for
it's possible.
1456.
So we already
Mentioning
chatos,
the Kabbalistic essay in 138 paragraphs.
Chatos, one
Closer,
of those
talk
covenants
about
where
a
it's left.
quote
Chatos
commentary
offered
on
up
some
for the sake of a
Asago
different kind of
unpublished
chatos.
consists of
So
the
again, I was
structures
supposed to
of
go ahead
structures
and
of the
bring a
guide
chatos
for the
ultimately
bookmarks.
again for Caleb. But the
Jacob
coin has in
Taylor
mind for
used
Dam.
how
Ultimately, the covenant is
Arizi's
going to be good.
translation
But
in which he
chatos
corrects
l'shem
meaning.
kol,
It
my
seems
time
that
was
he
the reason.
wrote the
Shakat osa
Asago
l'chatos amrachona.
at the beginning of
Ultimately,
his
because it's supposed intent. And
no,
therefore, chatos is offered up for an ola. It's not
Kabbalistic
going to be good.
revelation
I
delivered by
marry
the serpent.
chatos l'shem
Gentleman
chatos nishkata
thinks
l'shem
that
ola psula.
Tila
Gemara says,
composed a
"Al
Kabbalistic
amarava chatos
treatise
sheshachta
entitled
ani
Hekalo
shemukuyev
of the
chatos
same character
psula ani
as per
shemukuyev
Hekalo.
ola kshera." So let's say another case of an angel's name. If a chatos was shafted for someone who is chayiv a chatos, ultimately, again, it is possible. But if it was shafted for someone who's chayiv an olah, ultimately, again, it's going to be kosher. I'm saying, what's the case over here? If you look at Rashi, Rashi says it's about 6 lines after the bottom. So this is a case of shinur ba'al. This is a case of change of ownership. Let's say I am chayiv a chatos. The Kohen has in mind, when he does the Avod, he has in mind for Ruben. That interestingly enough, Ruben is also Chayiv Achatos. Also Chayiv Achatos. So in that case of Shinui Bailim, the Chatos is going to be possible. But interestingly enough, if the Kohen went ahead and offered it up on behalf of Ruben, and Ruben's Chayiv and Olah, so ultimately the covenant is kosher. Now again, remember when we say kosher, what does kosher mean? Kosher means the covenant is that obviously does not count towards my obligation. So much as what does this mean? Right? Come with these very interesting.
And expresses the highest respect for all Kabbalistic authors, even the most recent apocryphal ones. The work was republished with commentary by Mordecai Jaffe at Lublin in 1595, and was also translated into Latin by Pico di Mirandola. Pirush HaTiklo and Ta'amya
This is very interesting.
Mitzvot,
When my friend is
published together Constantinople 1543 to 1544, Gaza 58, with the preceding work. These are strongly tinctured with German mysticism, Recanati, Recanati, frequently quotes Judah the Hasid of Regensburg, Elias of Worms, and their disciples, and alludes also to the Spanish Kabbalists. Maimonides among them. He is rarely original, quoting almost all his other authorities, although Recanati has a high reputation for sanctity. He exercised less influence on his contemporaries than upon Christianity. To assist him in his Kabbalist researches, he studied logic and philosophy, and he endeavors to support the Kabbalah by philosophical engagement.
Such a yid like this that exists. So ultimately, the Gemara says, so Rabbi says, so someone who ultimately, again, Chatas was shafted for someone who has zero liability. What's the halacha? Psula. Psula. The chatas is false. I'm saying why is that? Why? No such thing. No such thing.
We could watch
like the shafted on behalf ultimately again of someone who has zero liability. Such a chatas is possible because there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a person who will say, okay, if I'm good enough that I haven't violated any averos, I've for sure gone ahead and in the battle and I say,
do it yourself to fill in. That's cool.
The Rabbi said as follows, ultimately again, a chatas, and both of these are actually very interesting halacha, that a chatas ultimately again is mechaper.
Oh, I thought he was making his own fulfillment of doing,
Remember again, let's go back. Chatas 101. And we already had this from our Harriet days. Right? What's halacha by a chatas? A chatas is mechaper on what? Any avera for which intentional violation is a kares. Unintentional violation comes, right? Unintentional violation results in a chatas. Now the Gemara introduces something very interesting. Not only is a chatas ultimately mechaper on chatas, but ultimately again a chatas is also mechaper on an asay. Unanased. So you must be Kavachom, makes that Kavachom. What's the Kavachom? Listen to this. Achadi Kisos Mekateres. If a Chatas is Mekater, ultimately again, Achadi Kisos, then ultimately again, Achadi Asel Lakoshkin. So what's a very interesting idea? If a Chatas is powerful enough to be Mekater, then you don't do it. It's okay. It's okay. Lucky, I think an extra caffeine this morning. It's good. It's good. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says that if ultimately, again, if Chatos is mechaper on Chaybe Kisos, then Alachas Kama Bakama is going to be mechaper ultimately again on Chaybe Ase. Remember, the Bas Minohi, that was very interesting. So is that to say that Halacha L'Maisa, is that to say that ultimately, again, somehow the liability for an assay is in the same category ultimately again as Chaimiki. So this is Rava said, because remember again, Rava said that if you go ahead and what? If the coin checks the Chatos, right, I'm supposed to be for me. But instead the coin does it instead for Reuven. And Reuven is Chayiv of Chatos. Ultimately, again, that's possible. Why? Because Halakha L'Maisa, Chatos is only the chaper for the owner. Now, what we infer from that is that if the other person who Shechter has the same level of liability, that stops when it's invalid. Amishim Akliv Ola, Sheira. But if the Chatos is Shechter for someone who's Chayiv Ola, interestingly enough, it is going to be kosher. And I will say that before you turn the page, take a look at the last time. Rashi says, "Amma lav minehu davirus aseshef inshallah ola aleim." So I say, obviously, being chayiv and ola is not considered to be comparable to being chayiv b'chatos. Other days, so the Gemara says,
from the time that we make the blessing,
the truth is like this. Achzakas is not fully mechaper for an assay. Rather, kind of just like tangentially. Tangentially is mechaper ultimately for an assay. Very interesting. In other words, so Chatos really is much more focused as a precision type of kapara, or again, chayvekisus. It kind of just on the side goes out in the kapara on the assay, but that's not its primary form of kapara. Rava says this. So it's like second line from the top. Zayin Madei. Zomar Rava. Ola sheshachta shalom lishma. Other Yisrael Dama shalom lishma. So we've actually seen this halacha already. So Rava says as follows: An Ola that was shechted shalom lishma. Now listen. Remember again in the world of shalom lishma. What does the shalom lishma mean? What does shalom lishma mean? Two forms of reverse is very important, right? It's fucking 101. You gotta hold cup on this. Right? Two forms of shalom lishma. Either, right, shalom l'shem lishma for kodesh, I have in mind for the wrong carbon, or shalom lishma l'bayim, have in mind for the wrong owner. So whenever you see shalom lishma, those two categories are interchangeable. Some are other owner shashachta shalom lishma. If an owner was shafted shalom lishma, aser mizrov damar shalom lishma. So what is the Gemara saying over here? Essentially, just because you did one part of the carbon shalom lishma, don't do the rest of it shalom lishma, right? So let's say shchita was done shalom lishma, okay? Make sure the other parts of the carbon are done lishma. Either it's a pasuk, can be based on a pasuk, or it can be based on logic. So the Gemara says, if I say svara, so we'll say, if I say across. If I say across, if it's a pasuk, motza svaseka tishkar. The pasuk says again, keep the utterances of your mouth, which means what? When you say the carbon is going to be an olah, then do it as an olah. The shchita wasn't done lishma. Okay, so get the rest of it right. If I say svara, we'll say the other possibility is that it's logic. Why? You should be shani bar. Let's do that. What's the name? What did you say before? That's because you messed up on one stage. Does not mean you should mess up the subsequent stage. In other words, so I messed up, just because I had wrong kavanah about the shchita does not mean that I should maintain wrong kavanah for the rest of the processes. And I both said, remember again, we spoke this out before, a tremendous Moshe Haskell in life.
Yeah, there's like 1,000 things to do, but that was good.
Sometimes we think that just because we've made a mistake, it puts us on a particular irreversible path. It's not true. Just because I've made a mistake in certain ways doesn't mean I can't course correct later on. But 1 second, even if I course correct, I can't go back and fix the shchita. The shchita is still going to be shalom lishma.
Now
So
let's have
which we
debates.
harken back in reference to our most favorite words in Shas, which are my dahava hava. You're right, my dahava hava. The sheet is messed up. Okay, got it. And I was saying, the reality is that there are some things in life, and this is a hard pill to swallow. But the truth is, there are some things in life you can't correct. There are some things in life, right? When you check that carbon shalom lishma, you can't fix it. You cannot fix it. No matter how much you daven, no matter how much you yearn to go back and fix it, you can't fix it. Once the shechita is done, shalom lishma, that is an irreversible mistake. But just because I've made irreversible mistakes does not mean that I can't do
Yo,
better
dog.
going forward.
To my knowledge, it's not possible to do 613 mitzvot because you have to be both genders to be able to do this. Please give me the main areas where you would hick up and how many the average person could be able to do if they're a man or if they're a woman. And also, give me a strongman argument or stillman argument how someone, if they somehow were able to change genders, could do them all.
And then he died. So we'll say, so what's the halacha? His offspring will never say,
Yo, dog, you're basically right. No single human can do all 630 mitzvot, and gender is one of the big reasons. I'm not the only one. Here's a clean breakdown of why nobody can do 630 gender-specific mitzvot. Here are the biggest hiccups. Mitzvot that apply only to men. Time-bound positive commandments, for instance, to fill in seats at certain prayers. Priestly mitzvot, if you're a Kohen, temple service blessings. Kingship, war-related mitzvot, writing a sefer Torah. Mitzvot that apply only to women. Laws of Nida, family purity, lighting Shabbat, and Yom Tov candles, classically framed as her domain, certain childhood-related mitzvot. So yes, you do need to be both male and female just to qualify for all of them. Status-based mitzvot. Even if you could gender swap, you'd still be stuck. Kohen versus Levi versus Israel. You can't be all three. King of Israel, only one guy at a time. Sanhedrin judge. Nazir. Someone who owns land in Israel, someone who sins accidentally. Yes, there are mitzvot that apply only after failure. Temple-dependent mitzvot, roughly 200 to 250 mitzvot require a standing temple, ritual purity, active sacrifices. Right now they're wild. So how many mitzvot can someone actually do? Rough mainstream numbers, very approximate. Average Jewish man today, 270 to 200 million mitzvot potentially applicable. Of those, maybe 60 to 80 are regularly doable in daily life. Average Jewish woman today, 230 to 250 mitzvot potentially applicable. Of those, maybe 60 to 80 are regularly doable as well. Different mix, similar count. Important point, exempt does not equal less holy. The system is role-based, not skill-based. The strong traditional student argument. Someone could do all 613. How that works conceptually. Here's a classic answer, especially in Kabbalah and Chassidut. 613 is for Klal Yisrael, not the individual. The mitzvot are distributed across the collective body of Israel. Just like the organs of the body, no single organ does everything. Perfection exists at the national level, not the individual level. Gilgul reincarnation theory. A soul may return multiple times. Each lifetime fulfills different mitzvot. Across incarnations, a soul can theoretically complete all 613. Arizal Zohar. Gender searching argument. Yes, a soul could be reincarnated as a male in one life and a female in another. So, across lifetimes, the same soul fulfills both sets. This is explicitly discussed in Kabbalistic sources. In 10 counts where action is impossible. If a mitzvah is truly impossible, temple status, etc., wanting to do it and accepting it as binding still has spiritual weight. Bottom line, Rabbi Mike, no one is meant to do all 613 in one lifetime. Mitzvot are a distributed system. Gender difference is a feature, not a bug. Wholeness is achieved through community, time, soul, cycle, intent. If you want next level, we can list exactly which mitzvot are genderless, or break it down via Rabbi or Sefer Chutz or full mystical how mitzvot map on the soul order.
When you say that there is Yesh Bailim La'achar Nisa, so are you saying like literally that the Yorish, that the heir becomes the owner? So to the point that the Kohen had Adasa Shinoi Bailim, had in mind for someone else, that the heir himself will be obligated to bring a new carbon. Is that literally what you're saying? Right? We see Odilma, the Ika Kami Ase Gabe Mechapra. Right? Or maybe no. Right? Maybe it's not literal, but rather what do you mean? Maybe what you mean is as follows. That halacha l'maisa, meaning is like this. That the heir is considered to be the owner in that halacha l'maisa, if the heir himself has certain averos, specifically positive commandments that he transgressed, ultimately, again, this ola that is being brought could atone for him. In other words, but not that he's the literal owner, it's just that he has the ability, so to speak, to be a quasi-owner, in that this carbon can atone for him. So which one do you mean? So it says here the shadow, so Ravashi literally says that the heir becomes the owner. So ultimately, again, Rav Pinchas asks, Ravashi says, do you mean that like figuratively?
How does reincarnation in Judaism work? Because it's not really in Torah. Where does that come about?
So Rav Pinchas says, I mean it literally.
Is mainstream
I mean it
thought,
literally. And therefore, Allah if the Kohen were to have das for Shinui violence, the covenant itself would quite literally be invalid.
Yoda, great question. This is one of the Judaism is their stuff that people get tripped up because they expect everything to be explicit in the Torah. Reincarnation, Gilgal is a perfect example. First, reincarnation is not explicit in the Torah. You will not find a verse that straight up says souls come back in new bodies. So where does it come from? Where reincarnation comes from in Judaism really hints to not close. There are breadcrumbs that fold out. A generation does. A generation goes and a generation comes. The soul being remembered or returned. Midrashim, where biblical figures seem to reappear spiritually. Nothing is airtight, more like mystical,
what is happening over here is as follows.
Zohar, 13th century game changer. This is real game changer. This is where reincarnation becomes real Jewish discourse. The Zohar explicitly talks about Gilgal, Neshama, which explains souls returning to fix unfinished spiritual work. Frames reincarnation is tikkun out, punishment. From here on, it's in the air. The RSL 16th century systematizes everything. Rabbi Isaac Luria basically turns reincarnation into a full operating system. According to Arizal, almost every soul reincarnates. Souls come back to complete mitzvah, fix character flaws, repair cosmic damage. Souls can switch genders, enter partially, soul sharing temporarily, possess giver. This becomes normative Kabbalah. So what's mainstream Judaism on reincarnation? Here's the keynotes. Or traditional mainstream reincarnation is widely accepted, especially in Hasidic, Sephardi traditions, Kabbalah influence communities, but it's not a required belief. You can fully be Orthodox and say, I don't really focus on that stuff. Totally fine. Rambam. Since you said Rambam. It actually gives me jokes. Okay. Rambam does not mention reincarnation at all. Important points. Rambam emphasizes one life, Olam Haba, as intellectual, spiritual afterlife. He avoids mysticism almost completely. Silence does not equal rejection, but most scholars read Rambam as not believing in Gilgal. So Rambam Judaism does not no reincarnation study. Arizal Judaism is reincarnation everywhere. Both are legit within Orthodoxy. Is reincarnation dogma? No. Judaism required beliefs. God exists, Torah is divine, rewarding consequence, some form of afterlife. How souls get there, that's flexible. How Jews usually think about it practically. Most people don't walk around obsessing over past lives. The vibe is, live this life right, do the mitzvah in front of you, whatever cosmic bookkeeping exists is done. Reincarnation is more like, if justice or soul growth needs more time, God has mechanisms. One line summary. Torah is silent, Zohar introduces it, Arizal systematizes it, Rambam ignores it. Mainstream Judaism allows it, it doesn't require it. Yo, dog, what happens when we die in Judaism?
I just want to point out how incredible it is to learn this. Remember again, the Ikar of Rosh Hashanah is not Shuvah. Rosh Hashanah is not a day of Shuvah. Rosh Hashanah ultimately is Kabbalah's Omah.
What happens when death equals separation, not annihilation? Your body returns to dust. The Neshama soul continues. Judaism never treats death as the end of existence, just the end of embodiment. Immediate stage accounting clarity called Din V'Chospon, judgment and accounting Olam HaNeshama, Neshamos, world of souls. There is not courtroom drama, it's truth exposure. You experience your life as it actually was, no deception, no ego filters. Think radical moral clarity, not punishment theater. Purification stage, yes, Judaism has Gehinnom, but not what it is. Spiritual cleansing, ego burning off, identity,
Shuvah has the
refinement, moral
ability to
detox,
go
where it's
ahead
not eternal
and
damnation, fire torture.
Shiva has the
The
ability
max
to
is
go
12 months, most souls way less. Its rehab not prison. Olam Haba, world to come. This is the destination they describe as closest to God, soul awareness. True consciousness, spiritual pleasure, not physical reward. Rambam's version, pure intellect plus divine closeness. Kabbalah's version, soul resonance with the divine light. Different metaphors, idea, conscious existence and truth. Resurrection of the dead. Tafiyat Hamatim. This is a future world theology, not immediate afterlife. Fully. At some point in Messianic time, souls return to bodies, physical, spiritual. Reality reunites. That's core Jewish belief, 13 principle faith. Very non-Christian equals escape of the body, believes in redeeming the body. Mainstream math, simple version. That's so clarity, so cleansing, if needed. Olam Haba. Resurrection, future. Rambam versus mystics. Rambam, no reincarnation. Emphasis. Olam Haba. Intellectual closeness, that resurrection. Future miracle, not daily focus. Kabbalah, reincarnation possible. Soul repair cycle. Multi-layered afterlife realm, soul fragments, levels, reincarnation paths. Judaism is vibe about death, not fear-based, not hell-based, not reward-based. Judaism is love, not death. Afterlife is important, but not obsession. One-line rabbi summary. You don't go somewhere forever. Go through truth, repair, process, and return.
Say, I'm going to accomplish this. I'm
What
going
about
to do
Sheol?
this. I'm going to make this happen. And literally, I'm not moving from here until it gets done. That's the way accomplishments happen. If you're here, if you're there, you're multitasking this, that, and you're all over the
Sheol
place,
is an OG
you're not going to
afterlife term,
accomplish.
and it's way earlier and way quieter, and everything we just talked about. What Sheol is the grave underworld, and it's not Hebrew Bible. Key phrases: everyone goes there, righteous, wicked, kings, peasants, no reward, no punishment, no fire, angels, no judgment, just existence and shadowy silencing. Think cosmic waiting room, muted consciousness, the land, where Sheol shows up all over early biblical books. Tehillim, Psalms, Job, Kohelet, Hiob, Job, Kohelet, Ecclesiastes talks about the dead do not praise God, and Sheol, who can thank you? I descend to Sheol. That's not hell, that's not heaven, that's a neutral dead space. Why Sheol feels so different from later Judaism? Because Jewish afterlife lives, early Israelite view focused on this life God, rewards nations and families here. After is equal to vague, not central. Sheol reflects the stage. What replaces Sheol later? Over time, Sheol splits conceptually. Gehenna, moral, reckoning, purification, temporary. Gan Eden, Olam, Haba, reward, closeness to God, spiritual pleasure. So instead of everyone going to Sheol, it becomes soul, judgment, purification, overworld. Sheol basically gets absorbed into later metaphysics. Does Sheol still exist in Judaism? Depends on who you ask. Rambam Tagri, Sheol is a poetic way to say death grave, not a literal, medical, physical place, biblical language, not doctrine. Academic spot, read. Sheol is an ancient Near Eastern underworld concept similar to Mesopotamian beliefs. Judaism later moves past it. Mystical read, Sheol is the lowest spiritual state, a kind of unconsciousness, soul level before refinement, sometimes associated with early Gehenna stages. The Sheol hell, no hardening, no eternal pleasure, no Satan, torture, defilement, no moral sorting. One line evolution summary. For early Tanakh Sheol, everyone goes, nothing happens. Second Temple era, moral afterlife ideas start emerging. Rabbinic Judaism, Hinnom plus Olam Haba, Kabbalah, full soul journey flowchart. Tie in your bigger questions around 13 minutes about reincarnation to the Sheol reflects a Judaism where covenant mattered more than individual afterlife, collective destiny, personal heaven, obedience now, metaphysical payoff later. As Jewish theology deepened, afterlife ideas got more precise, but Sheol never fully disappears. It just becomes background. Alright, that's cool. Anything else? No, that's good for now.
That's because you don't want to become Tuma is communicable. Onesh as punishment. But the real negative byproduct of sin is that it creates a distance. It fractures the relationship between myself and God. I will say it's like in any time, like whenever you do something in a human relationship, sometimes we do things, and what we do is we put a distance between ourselves and people that we love because of things that we've done, right? You say something not nice to your wife, you do something not nice to your wife. So what happens? Now there's a distance. And that distance itself is painful. So I will say, when we sin, create the distance between ourselves and the shparach. That's, yes, there's punishment. Yes, every sin carries with it punishment. But I want to tell you something. Punishment is the easy part to deal with. So the shparach was ready to forgive as long as we're sincere. It's easy to wipe out punishment. To bridge the distance, that's the hard part of tshuva. So ultimately, says the Gemara, what happens when I sin? There's a distance. Karban chatos is the atonement. That's how we bridge the gap. That's how ultimately, again, I have the ability to come before God. And then once I come before, now that the relationship, so to speak, has been reinstated, still not reinstated, then comes my oath. The olah is the gift to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm here and I'm ready to reinstate what I will say. But remember again, karbanos are not hocus pocus. Even a karban only works how? With tshuva. Right? A karban without tshuva is an empty offering, is an empty gift. It's an empty gift. I will say, you know what a karban like tshuva, can you imagine for a moment? You go ahead and it's your anniversary and you walk into your house and you take a gift and you fling it on the kitchen counter and you say, hey, go enjoy. Right? So it's like, so you don't need to schedule a meeting with me to know, right? To know that is not going to work. So remember again, a karban without tshuva, is bless you, is like flinging at a guy. Here, God, here you go. Karban without tshuva is zero. Not only that, you give a gift like that, not only does the gift not work, but it's actually compromised the relationship even more. A karban without tshuva means that literally you value the relationship so little with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I'm not willing to invest to go ahead and repair it. On the other hand, when there's tshuva, real tshuva, a real sincere desire to just go to shalom. I'll say, you know what tshuva is in my life. I miss the closeness. I miss the togetherness. I miss that when I just walk down the street, I feel like you're holding me. I felt that way in life. And because of my actions, Yichukol Garam, I don't feel that now. And I want to feel that again. I want to feel your embrace. I want to feel your love. I want to feel like you're always holding me every single moment. But my actions have pushed you away. And I want to come back to you. That's tshuva. Oh, you do tshuva, then that karban is a beautiful gift. So the chatas comes first, because that's part of the tshuva process. After tshuva is done, olah then comes along to really, it's a gift to reunite the relationship. So beautiful. All right, let's go back to chutz minapes. Back chatas. Suppose you remember again in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said that there. Remember, in general, what was the first rule of the Mishnah? What was the first rule of the Mishnah? That if you go ahead and you offer up a karban shalom l'shma, right? You offer up a shlomim for the sake of a toda, right? Or an olah for the sake of a shlomim. What's the halacha? Karban is kosher, but doesn't count for the owner. There are two exceptions to that rule. Well, according to Tanakh, there's two. According to other things, there's two. Two exceptions to the rule are chatos and pesach. Now, chatos we already took care of, right? Chatos is only valid if done explicitly, ultimately again for a karban chatos. The Gemara says, the Mishnah said also karban pesach. So now the Gemara focuses on karban pesach a little bit. It says the Gemara, chutz mina pesach v'chatos. So pesach minolan. From where do we know karban pesach? From where do we know karban pesach? V'chsiv shamar esach chodesh ha'aviv v'asisa pesach. Ultimately, again, the Gemara says, literally, keep or guard the chodesh ha'aviv v'asisa pesach, and you will go ahead and do the karban pesach. So what do we learn from here? Shiv kol asiyos l'shem pesach. All of your dealings, right? All of your dealings, everything you do, ultimately, again, should be for the sake of karban pesach. So what's it? That's the pasuk. Vas shamar es chodesh ha'aviv v'asisa pesach. All of your asiyos, all of your doings, all of your actions should be for the sake of karban pesach. Ashkichon shinui kodesh. Okay, so that teaches me shinui kodesh and validates the pesach. Shinui bailumino. Then how do I know about a change of ownership? That seva martim zevach pesachu. Pasuk says, you shall say, it is zevach pesach. Shavei zvicha l'shem pesach. Teaches me that the offering must be done l'shem pesach. Now, in eno in the shinui kodesh, if I don't need this to teach me shinui kodesh, Because remember again, we just learned out Shinui Kodesh from where? Shamaras Chodesh Aviv Asisa Pesach. So therefore again, Tinehu Le'inyan Shinui Bailim. Ultimately, I use it to teach me Shinui Bailim. Incredible. So Ashkich on the mitzvah. Now we know the Chatila, Karban Pesach has to be offered out for Karban Pesach and for the designated owner. La'akev Minolan. How do I know that if you didn't do this, the carbon itself is compromised? Because the pasuk says, "V'zavachta Pesach la'Hashem Elokecha." The pasuk says, "You shall offer up the Pesach la'Hashem for Hashem your God," meaning that if it's not done for the sake of Pesach, ultimately again it's not going to be good. Maskil for Rav Safra is 1 second. Hi v'zavachta la'achiv da'asa. Does that phrase come to teach us that it's l'ikuva? The Gemara says, "Hi miboide l'chidra of Nachman." I will say ultimately again, this is needed for Rav Nachman. What did Rav Nachman say? Dam Rav Nachman or Rav Barabuach, Minayin l'Moshe Pesach shekar shlamim. So what's very interesting? How do you know that if you have a leftover Karban Pesach, it's offered up as a shlamim? I will say, what's the case of a leftover Karban Pesach? So very simply, I designated a sheep as a Karban Pesach. Then what happened? I lost it. I replaced it with another animal, offered that replacement animal up, and then what happens? Hashavas Aveda. I found my original Karban Pesach. So what happens with that animal? That animal is offered up as a shlamim. How do you know this? Shneimar v'zavachta Pesach Hashem Elokecha son ubakar. You shall offer up the Pesach for Hashem your God, son ubakar, sheep and cattle. I will say, here's the problem with that. You can't be Karban Pesach from cattle. Karban Pesach only comes either from sheep or goats. What's going on over here? Mikan, what do you see from here? Mikan l'mosar Pesach shit. From here you see about said that if you have we call this a leftover Karban Pesach. But you understand the case? You see if you have leftover Karban Pesach, you offer it up for the type of carbon that can normally be brought from sheep or from cattle. What's the type of carbon that can normally be brought from sheep and cattle? Ma'ininu shlamim. Ultimately, a carbon shlamim. So that's I need that pasuk for. Rav Safra, Mizavachta Pesach, l'chidra Nachman. Ultimately, against Rav Safra says, "Darshan of Mizavachta Pesach like Rav Nachman." Shamar es chodesh sha'aviv. So Shamar teaches me that what? L'mitzvah b'shinui kodesh. That teaches me ultimately again that Allah l'maisa l'chatchila. You have to have the right carbon of the right carbon. Ba'martem zeva Pesach b'shinui b'ayla l'mitzvah. Zeva Pesach teaches me that l'chatchila it has to be offered for the right owner. So we'll say, so now I know that l'chatchila Karban Pesach has to be offered for the designated carbon and the designated owners. But how do I know that if I fail to have the right kavanas, that the carbon is invalid? How do I know that? To which the Gemara says one word: who? 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 We'll say whenever you see the word who is always action. It has to remain in that state. Who teaches me that halacha it is not just l'chatchila that you have to have in mind for the carbon, and not just l'chatchila that you have to have in mind for the bailim, but rather again it's failure to have those right kabbalas of the carbon. The ashkechon ultimately again zvicha. So now again I will say now I know that halacha l'maisa ultimately again zvicha that shchita sharavodos minalan. How do I know about other avodos as well? Howil the gully. Once he reveals it in one, then ultimately we apply that to others. Rav Ashi says, Howil the gully lo aminon ella avodos minalan tichsev zos haTorah the ola mincha. Ultimately, and this says this is the pasuk the ola. This is the Torah for ola mincha. The Tanya biyom savosos bnei Yisrael lahakid es karbaneim zebechar u'maisu pesach hikishu hakasav l'shlamim. The Torah ultimately again compares all of these kavaros, namely Pesach, to Shlamim. How so? Mash Shlamim, bein the Shinui Kodesh, bein the Shinui Bailim, Ba'inon, L'mitzvah. So just like by Shlamim, you have to have in mind for the right owners and for the right carbonic designation. This is l'chatchila. At kol bein Shinui Kodesh, bein Shinui Bailim, L'mitzvah. Ultimately, so to all of these other kavaros, we're focusing on Pesach, l'chatchila. You have to have in mind for the right owner and for the right carbonic designation. Uke Shlamim. Mashlam bein zvicha bein sharavodos lo chalakta b'hen l'mitzvah. Af Pesach lo kach lo kol bein zvicha l'sharavodos la'akid. Ultimately, again, so it's just like by shlamim. Once we see that there's a need for the shema, is for all of the avodos. So too by Pesach, the need for all of the avodos, the need for the Shabbat, also the avodos as well. So the Gemara says, La'akid, Mishum Shnemar, Hu, B'zichayna La'akid, Elohu, Lamali. Ultimately, again, we'll say, no, we'll stop over by the Hu. Stop over by the Hu. So again, we're starting to just understand what we have over here. Right? Two more lines. Elohu, Lamali, perfect. Elohu, Lamali, Kidisanya, Namar B'Pesa, Hu, B'Shchita La'akiv, Aval Asham Lo Ne'emar Bo Hu El La'akak Tarasim. Right, now I get to two dots. Now the Gemara says like this. It says by Pesach, Hu. Now listen, remember again, what did we use the Hu by Pesach for? Hu B'Hav Yaso Yehe, which teaches us that the need for right carbonic designation, as well as the need ultimately again for right carbonic designation, is not only lechatchila, but rather what? It is la'akiv. It is la'akiv. If you don't have it, it compromises the carbon. And interestingly enough, the Gemara says about Asham lo ne'amar bo hu elachar tarsimur. By Asham, it only says the hu after the offering of, or after the burning of the limbs. Interesting enough, by an Asham, even if you didn't burn the sacrificial limb, the Asham ultimately again is going to be kosher. Just what I'm pointing out over here is that the word hu, depending on where the placement is, ultimately redaction certain. So we'll say bottom line, what's the takeaway from this last sugya? All the Gemara is doing is just backing up what the Mishnah said. Whereas by other karbonos, lechatchila, you have to have in mind the Shema. The Shema means the Shema for the carbonic designation and for ownership designation. Failure to have the Shema by other karbonos, ultimately again, the carbon itself is still kosher, but does not count towards the obligation of the owner. The Mishnah says there are two exceptions to that rule. Exception number one is chatos. We saw the source of that on Friday, and again was reinforced today. Chatos hu. Again, it's the same hu. Chatos hu. Hu means that you have the Shema is not only the chatchila, but even b'di'avad. And if you fail to have the Shema by all stages of the chatos is pasul. Pasul means the carbon does not work. Now the Gemara says, Karban Pesach, how do we know? Ba'amartem zeva pesach hu. Who teaches me that by Karban Pesach, I must have a Lishma designation, both Lishma for the owner, Lishma for the particular type of carbon, by every step of the carbonic process of Karban Pesach, and failure to do so fundamentally invalidates the carbon. Rabosai, shkoyach. Incredible. All right, stay tuned for the schedule for tomorrow. Still in progress. All right, so we'll say good morning. Let us begin. You might thank all of our sponsors for this morning's share, to thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, those who are ROTHSCHILD, for dedicating all the Shumer and Joshua's this year in the schools of the service for all of Israel. Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul, Habba ben Ratovet ben Goldberg, for Aliyah ben Hashem of his parents, Avram ben Asher Pinchas, Begar Ezel Bas celebrating the hope that the tefillos of our Kidon all of Israel are answered. And our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Elul, Shmuley Liga Binovich Le'ili Nishmas David, Tom's father, Rabbi Aritvam, Rabbi Yitzchak Aryeh ben Rabbi Yaakov Zichron Lebracha. We'll say today's daf is Hey 5, but we are picking up Mamish, top of Dalit of the days. A lot to do today, and we're going to get it done. So the verse is as follows: literally the top. V'afagav departi lav dafka. Right to me a dafka. So let's just reorient ourselves for literally a second. So remember again, yesterday's daf, we really had the fantastic sugya with Aleph, discussing the idea of how we know that every step of the carbonic process, Shchita, Kabbalah, Zrika, Olacha, have to be done what we call L'Shem Kachin, for the purpose of a particular carbon. We then transitioned to the topic of how we know that each of the steps has to be done for the sake of the particular owner. So the Gemara said, essentially we're trying to learn out one from the other, and the Gemara says that there are four distinctions. Even though two of the distinctions are not necessarily so specific and explicit, two of them are Maishna Shin, for example, the Gemara says, Maishna Shin Le'Bailin, Delo Havi Psul B'Gufo. Remember again, on one hand, Shin Le'Bailin is not really a psul in the actual carbon itself. In other words, nothing changes in the identity of the carbon. So it's really just a different thought, different mindset. The Gemara says, well, in truth, Shinoi Kodesh Nami Machshav is Machshav Ba'amu. You can see the same thing about Shinoi Kodesh. Change of carbonic designation is also really just a thought and not something physical in the carbon. Allocate with the action of Psula, but let's say by Shinoi carbon, some change in mental designation ultimately affects the carbon. How can I make even the action of Pasla? So too, when you have a change in the mental designation of the owner, that also negatively impacts the carbon. Rabbi, who says that there's shinui violent even after the death of the owner. And we'll say again, so we spoke about this before a little bit yesterday, but let's say again, Ruben was going to bring a shlamim, he died. So his children could bring the shlamim on his death, right? The only carbon that you really can't bring posthumously is a chatas or an asha, a sin offering. For other carbonates you could bring even, you can't bring it posthumously, but your children can bring it. So you could have shinui violent even after you die. So the Gemara says, Tarti mina ikela mitzvah. Ultimately, again, there are still two other cases which would stand. Sefer Rashi is like this. So remember again, we're asking now, how do we know that the din of shinoi bailim, namely, that you can't change the designation, you should not change the designation of the actual owner of the carbon. So any steps of the carbon process. Pretty similar tone for him and not his friends. The owner of the carbon. But the way you see, you should not change the designation of the carbon. The Gemara was is that what that puzzle is used for? I would like to say for another drasha. What's the drasha? The mitzvah of the that same buzzer, Rabbi Shimon Omer, as Sha'alav Chai B'Achar Yusuf, as She'inu Alav Einu Chai B'Achar Yusuf. That teaches us a different halacha losai. What happens if you designate a carbon and ultimately something happens to the carbon? It's the personal responsibility of Sha'alav, which is upon you. Ultimately, for example, a nega. Right? A nega is a person who says, Hare Alai. I hereby put upon you, obligation upon you. If something then happens to the carbonic animal, you are obligated to go ahead and replace it. On the other hand, if you bring in a dava, a gift offering, the dava is two. This animal is a carbon. Well, if something happens to the animal, then what? And halacha l'maisa again, you are not obligated to go ahead and replace it. Some of these might have all reason. Even the Alai, you might because when you say Alai, it's as if literally again you're putting that animal on your shoulders and you are obligated for responsibility. So we're using the pasuk of something different. So which you want to Ravashi, even near so low, the Ravashi is dashing the first part of the pasuk, the near so low. He's not dashing a lot. People will say, turns out that halach reminds the pasuk is always teaching to Allah. Number one, the near so low l'chata teaches me that during every step of the carbonic process, the processes must be done to the shape of the intended owner. But that's the chativa. Obviously, as you see, the ever, the carbon still may be kasher depending on the carbon. The last phrase, Allah, or the last word, Allah, teaches me that when I take a neder, if something happens to the animal, I am obligated to replace it. If it's in the dava, ultimately I'm not obligated to replace it. Difference between a neder and a dava, a neder is hare alai, take it upon you. I take it upon you, something happens to the animal, I have a replacement obligation. The dava, hare is something happens to the animal, I'm not obligated to replace it. Incredible. So now I know that I have to check the animal to the shape of the intended owner. Now I know checking and zika. Kabbalah. What about Kabbalah?
Tell me tomorrow night, when you get home, we're tired. And the dance, and the game, the phone. When the landing, when the crashing on the road. Tiny drink of tea,
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, it's winning, this is free. Yeah, that's what I am. Oh, he's watch out, boy, she'll chew you up.
Now, if I don't need that to teach me about carbonic designation itself, because we've already learned that, use it to teach me about owner designation, that there must be explicit owner designation for this stage of the cover. Now, Rabbi asking the question. So, one says this: Yasa cloud, say the word Yasa as a cloud, Zeva prat. Cloud is prat. Even the cloud, I'm not sure the prat. So I remember, you never have a cloud and a prat. So ultimately, again, the cloud itself is going to be limited by the prat. So the Gemara says,
Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes. She's a man eater. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes. She's a man eater.
Just that phraseology.
When we hang out with you, that much you can do. And I understand, think that you rip your world apart. Then it'll matter. If you live in the earth has been designed in the heart. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes. She's a man eater. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes. She's a man eater.
Ultimately, again, the first cloud in the carbon, anything cloud in the carbon, even now for China level, this has been done as well. But ultimately, the first cloud, had been stuff, but only sacrificial rights. The last cloud is seen to indicate anything involved in the carbon. Even the spilling out of the leftover blood ultimately again has to be Lishma. So that even if you want to attach the cloud to cloud, the two bookends don't match. I would want to say Lishma. The cloud is partly Garish Gagap. That's okay, because again, you see Rabbi Shmuel, they were Garish in the cloud even like this. Even the first cloud and the second cloud didn't exactly mirror each other, it's still Garish. You want to say cloud, yeah, Tata, Elikina Prat. Whenever you have a cloud, remember again,
You have to get your gun out quick.
you help modify the cloud. Not fraction of food just like the pot, it's talking about one of the sacrificial rights.
So yeah, that's what happened.
That's pretty dumb, so to any part of the sacrificial service has to be done but Fulash avoided the Chayav and Allah Bakhot. Askol avoided the Chayav and Allah Bakhot. Again, but I could also say, just like the part is talking about in Avodah, which is Chayav if you do it outside of the Avodah, so maybe the din of the Shema that only applies to any Avodah that can't be done outside of the Avodah. Shchita is Rikaim, that would apply to Shchita, slaughtering, Shchita, sprinkling, but Kabbalah and Halacha, but technically speaking, Kabbalah and Halacha done outside of ultimately again, would that be problematic? The extra that has all second years, we also say the fact that he only refers to something that needs to be done in the northern side of the country. And only applies to katals that are done in the communities, on the inside of the Kodesh. At Kol Hatal something in the Hatal Sapinios. Shkita the Kabbalah. Shkita Lo. That would include Shkita and Kabbalah, but not Shkita.
If you're in the half, you don't know half. The truth is, the drug checker is going either way. What you do when you do the drug either way?
Oh, this motherfucker doesn't even have his sound on?
We know other versions in K-12 is not a classic K-12. Rather, we use each one is able to stand on its own, and therefore each has to rest. Okay, you guys know how it is. Zrika, Idravashina. That's what also that Zrika will not do. Zrika the small, there's enough the drugs are all about this. So I speak from our Nazir. The shots on the nose. So now I know about El Nazir. What about the rest of General Shlomo? If you hear a name from El Nazir, maybe you're sitting out from El Nazir. Mali El Nazir Shekin Yesh Imoyen Domin Achiru. Rashi says, Shebayin Imo Chatos Va'ola. There's a Chatos and Ola that accompany the ayah of the Nazir. Imte Nifto Shalme. Why does it say Shlomo like that, like in the plural? Kol Shlomo. Comes to include all Shlomim, and all Shlomim have a din of Lishma. First of all, I'm Ashke Fan Shlomim, Shar Kol Kachim, so now I know that all Shlomim have a din ultimately again of Lishma. What about the rest of Karbanas? The Chikim and Elif Mishlomim, maybe I'll learn out from Shlomim. Ma Shlomim should do in Smicha, Unisakim, Utinufas Chazir Yeshov. 1 second. But Shlomim are different. Why? Because all Shlomim require ultimately Smicha, meaning on the leg and the chest. There's some unique sources you can learn Karbanos, Al Amakra, Zos, HaTorah, the Ora, the Mincha, the Chatas, the Asham, the Lamiluim, the Zera Hashlamim. The Kishan HaKasav Lishlamim. The Torah equates all Karbanos to Shlamim. Mashlamim, Ben Shinei Kodesh, Ben Shinei Bailim, Abba'ina Lishma. At called Bein Shinrei Kodesh, Bein Shinrei Bailim, Ba'im Lishma. So that's it. Therefore, the Gemara, once you've established that ultimately again the din of Lishma, right? Shlamim, the Torah then goes ahead and equates all other Kabbalas to Shlamim. And just like Shlamim require, the Shema, remember again, there are two types of Lishma. There's what's called the Shema for Kodesh and the Shema for Bailim. The Shema for Kodesh means that when you offer up a carbon, you have to have in mind, you have to intend for the particular type of carbon. Just like Shema needs it, all other carbonos need it, so too, you have to have the Shema for Bailim. Ownership of Shema. You have to offer up the carbon with the intention for the particular owner. Incredible. Ema, Heicha the Shafak the Rush, Shalom the Shema. So that's the end. That's the end. Now what we've successfully established is that there is, again, this twofold Lishma. You have to have what we call Kabbanic Lishma and ownership Lishma. You have to have in mind during all of the avodas, Shita, Kabbalah, Zrika, Holacha, you have to have in mind for the particular carbon, and you have to have in mind for the particular owner in each of those steps as well. That's what we've established in the last block. Now we're going to ask for very good possession. So the Gemara said, well, 1 second. The Ema, here from the Shach of Yerushalayim Lishma, Yitzu. Now, the principle that we started this Masechta with a couple of days ago is, although you're supposed to have Lishma, what's that Lishma? What's the halacha if you don't have Lishma? What's the halacha? The carbon is kosher, but it doesn't count towards the owner's obligation. The Gemara says, why? If we just established that the Shema is a necessary carbonic criteria, both for the sake of the carbon, for carbonic designation, and for ownership, so why would we say if you don't have the Shema, then what? The carbon's puzzle. It's totally no good. So the Gemara says, the carbon should be puzzle. Once you go ahead, once you go and offer the Torah, Motos, Vasecha, Tishma, Vasisa, Kasher, and Dada. Most of these are interesting. So the Apostle is like, Motos, Vasecha, Tishma. So whatever you utter, right, make sure to honor the utterances of your lips. Vasisa, Kasher, and Dada. We shall go ahead and do as you vow. And also at the end of the Apostle is Asher, Kasher, and Dada, Midova, Asher, and Dada for the people. In the Dava, the gift offering that you spoke out with your mouth. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. The pasuk itself is confusing. What's confusing about it? Because the pasuk begins by talking about ultimately again a neder, and then at the end of the pasuk it switches over to a Dava. So that's going on over there. So what's kind of Dava neder? Why is it calling you the Dava at the end of the pasuk? It's a neder. Now here we go. It's not going to go that CC in there. That will not be in the Dava. It's very important halacha. The that if you executed on what you intended to do, then you can close the net, but it's not a single carbon. Or in other words, what the pasuk is teaching me is like this. If I offer up a carbon to the intended purpose, i.e. it's not, then the carbon is going to count for its intended purpose. But if for some reason you have a deviation on the shah, the carbon will still be effective, albeit in a different way. It won't be the net, it won't be the obligatory offering that you're going to bring, but it'll count as an Shabbat. So from here we see that if you lack Lishma, the carbon itself is still a valid carbon, but does not go ahead and satisfy your particular obligation. Again, so one more time. When you're going to bring a carbon, ultimately go ahead and honor the carbon by bringing it to the correct designation. As you promised, as you said you were going to. But if you did not do that, the end of the pasuk says, right, that's all in the I should be back to the people. It becomes their Java, it becomes a gift offering. So therefore, again, still kosher, but doesn't count towards your obligation. It's just Moses Sasachos, it's your Zosa Torah. And Moses says, interestingly enough, now it appears that we have two sisters, now if you want to tell earlier, so there's different parts. So it seems that we have two different sisters to highlight this sin. I mean, unless you want to
Do you dare me to draw the line? You got my body now, you got my soul. You don't even think about it, say no, no. And I'll do anything that you want me to. Yeah, and I'll do almost anything that you want me to.
Obligation, but the man says that invalid carbon. If a Chassadak Mono, Motzos Sasachar. So it's interesting enough, there's something more doctrines like this. The first passage is also probably teaches me the idea that Lishma is really necessary. But from that pasuk, I would have thought that the absence of Lishma fundamentally invalidates the carbon. Comes the pasuk of Motzos Sasachar, it teaches me that the absence of Lishma.
No, baby, now I can't go for that. No, baby, I can't go for that. No, baby, now I can't go for that. Can't go for that. Can't go for that. Can't go for that. Can't go playing twice as nice. Not that you say no lie. You the body now, you got my soul. And now say no. I'll do anything that you want me to. You almost anything that you want me to. Yeah, but I can't go for that. No, no. You can't do that. I can't go for that. No, no. You can't go for that. No, no. You can't do now. I can't go for that. Can't go for that. Can't go for that. Can't go for that.
So Rabbi says this doesn't make sense, right? If you tell me, like, I'm sorry. So this doesn't make sense. Why? Because at the end of the day, the carbon is a valid carbon, then it should count towards the owner's obligation. And if it doesn't count towards the owner's obligation, then it shouldn't be a valid carbon. So he's asking, either a carbon is good or it's not good. If it's good, it should be good for everything. And if it's not good, it should be invalid for everything. Which was it's not true. We do find this designation by Kabbalah. In local Lamaisa, sometimes a carbon could be a valid carbon, but it doesn't count towards the obligation of the owner. For example, there are certain carbonos that are brought posthumously. So obviously, a posthumous carbon is a valid carbon, but obviously it doesn't count towards the obligation of the owner. Why not? Why not? The owner's dead. So the owner says, it's not. You learn how each issue of the Echad plus Inesa was the Mr. Woman who's bringing her Kabbalah's after Chak. So remember it again. Let's say so Rachel gave birth, she brought her chatas, then she died. So what's halacha? He makes the base. You have here Yechna Rachel ultimately her children. Her orphans could bring her Ola. So the Gemara says, interestingly enough, that halacha lines again. So an Ola is one of the childbirth kamaras. Right? So halacha lines again, what you see from her children to bring her carbon. Now, obviously, what's the nature of that carbon? It's a valid carbon. Does it work for Rachel? No, Rachel's dead. So the Gemara says, Allah only is only of your shakatas. Now, obviously, this only works by all the shakatas. For example, she brought her Ola and then died, her children can't bring her chatas. Like there is no such thing as a Hashem's chatas. So but the point of it is, what do you see? This is like Pesach, what do you see? You see that there is a concept that a carbon can be a valid carbon, but doesn't count towards the owner's obligation. So listen, so which reflects is how we use Ola, right? Because an Ola can be brought after death. But Asham is going to also the Akam himself. We know, what about Asham person? What about Asham? So Asham can't be brought after death. Yes, and the reflects says, according to our Mishnah, you can go ahead and bring Asham, but if somebody he didn't have to bring Asham, but he had a mind for Ola, so how about his death was? That the
I see you, and you see me. Making me see, no, girl, you got to know. I've been taking that far from your heart, and you can't in my life. You might take my eye, rather than I watching you into your every move. Rather than I watching you. I'm watching you. Word, you play with love. Girl, and I'll turn around. Inside, you can take my eyes, private and I'm watching you.
I don't understand. If you tell me now that a carbon should be offered up this way, let's just retrace our steps for a moment. You told me that a carbon should be offered up the shema. Two forms of the shema. The shema for the sake of the designated, for the designated carbonic, for the specific carbonic designation, and the shema for the particular owner's designation. Okay. We've also established that if you don't offer the shema, what's the halacha? The carbon itself is still valid, but doesn't count towards the owner's obligation. It's like this just simply that I don't understand.
Into your every move, watching you, watching you, whoa.
I will make an opening for my own trouble. Which means that what? I'm going to answer my own question. If you look at that, I can do profound ideas. You might have sometimes
watching you, they see your every move. I'm watching you, I'm watching you, I'm watching you. They see your every move. They say private and I'm watching you. I'm watching you, I'm watching you. They see your every move. They say private and I'm watching you.
As we just said, it's treating us for halacha. If you didn't cover the Islam, then ultimately again it will be halacha your nether. But if you don't bring it with Shema, then at least it's in the Torah, which means it's a valid carbon, but that counts towards your obligation. That's the source. Yosef Rabbi Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Gabai. 12 people are sitting together. Yosef the Kamri, Hashdi Rish Lakish, Asham. So Shakish's problem was Asham, right? What was really Carbon Asham. So the Asham the Akhan himself, the Yosef the Kamri, the Lotzla Sefa. Because Asham on one hand is not what us to do, yet we want to apply the principle or the rule of Motzla Sefa Kishmar to an Asham. Ema Habba the Neder ben Jabalai. See what it is. Asham roll like see wow. Okay, in reality you could do it. But a carbon that can be brought as an double, it brought a load of small. Ultimately, it was a lysine should be accepted as a carbon, although used as not work towards the particular element. Asham, but maybe Asham is different. Because if you're in Asham cannot be brought as a major element double, so maybe they like to tell. If you can Asham is brought with small, it should not work at all. And the Rabbi is not teaching about the Hasa. There's not just real on the Kali. The Shafat also Lachakas. Also says you're accepted for a Chakas. Also the Shmok, Shira, Shemot the Shmok Sula. You're going to have to tell say, remember again, I mentioned this. The Tanakama from the beginning excludes the Chakas from this principle, right? The Tanakama espouses the principle. What's the principle? If you are, right, the principle, really, the underlying part of the principle is every single covenant has to be offered up to Shema. And there are two pieces to the Shema. The Shema, the covenant designation, the Shema, the order. If you don't offer up the covenant, the Shema, what's that covenant is valid, it doesn't count towards the order. The Tanakama excludes covenant Pesach and Chakas. But yet we never explain why it's not excluded. Here it is. I say, why is Chakas excluded? Because the Chakas, it says, Shachat also the Chakas. Right? The Pasuk says,
Everybody's high on consolation. Maybe not around me what is right for me. I'm in dreams and that's plain to see What the fuck is that? Is that the wrong song?
Maybe also here again, the Pasuk teaches me that something your brother is together in a double, the proper Shema, to be set as a covenant doesn't work for Yoda. Maybe in Hashem, it really works for Yoda. Amabai Hashem, the Yetzi, well, not just Hamas. No, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. You can't say that Hashem brought lower Shema and will go ahead and work to affect the owner's obligation. Why not? California, Ola, not Ola, in Malaysia, and Ola, which doesn't affect the Hafara, is considered to be a high level. Important Shalom Shema, also for the again, it's a valid covenant, but doesn't work towards the owner's obligation. Hashem from the Kata, it doesn't work for that. And Hashem ultimately, again, the best provide Kata, so it's going to
Carry on. Making a big decision. Now plain to see what will be. She's gone, oh I better learn how to face her. She's gone, oh I pay the devil to replace her. She's gone, oh what went wrong? Yet in the morning, look in the mirror. Let the covenant in her brush again in the stain. Facing, looking any younger. I can't see love taking on toll on me. She's gone, oh I better learn how to face her. She's gone, oh I pay the devil to replace her. She's gone, oh what went wrong?
"Oh no, Ishmael Yochifu."
I think it's
Second
something
line,
to do
5
with
beat.
being
The
in
Chazar
leadership.
being low rejected. Yeah, low rejected. Yeah, what's the Kamnamina?
I think it's something to do with
Shin
like you
Kachin,
can't compete
Shin,
with rich guys.
sorry,
Okay,
Shin,
like if you go, I
Shin
got a
Kachin,
fucking
Bishachat
Mercedes
Shalom Bishma,
GSX or
Kasha
like
Ve'inu
already
Maratzi.
powerful
Kamnamina Boshem of all these Kabbalas is what? That if you shach them Shalom Bishma, the covenant is
my
effective,
girlfriend is hot. Oh,
is
really?
effective, but
I'm
ultimately
dating
again
the
does
son.
not count towards the owner. Abani Abi Asham, so that will include Asham alias, Shin Kodesh, Bishachta Shalom Bishma, Kasha Ve'inu Maratzi. So to Asham, ultimately again, if Shachta Shalom Bishma, Halacha L'maisa again, it works, and ultimately again, but does not work towards the owner's obligation. I said the Gemara 1 second. Maybe it becomes denominator amongst all these other kabbalas of also blood. Technically speaking, they could all be blood as a neder and a mitzvah, and therefore that obviously would exclude ourselves, which cannot be blood as a neder and a mitzvah. And on the level, Zos Hachitola, the pasuk says Zos Hachitola. This is the Torah of Kabbalah. The pasuk says Zos Hachitola, the Ola, the Mincha, the Chatas, the Asham, the Lamiluim, the Zerah Hachon. So we'll say that pasuk is really incredible. But that pasuk is really incredible. What does that pasuk do? It brings all of Karbanos together. It brings all of Karbanos together. What's interesting enough, if you look at the way the pasuk reads, it's only Mincha, Chatas, Asham, Lamiluim, and the Zerah Hachon. So it's almost as if this is the very important aspect. The amount function culture destruction all the time. It's just like so. If you go ahead and check Shalom Bishma, and let's remember again, right here is referring to both types of Bishma. Bishma for Kabbalic designation, Bishma for ownership designation.
Dan Marino.
Same idea. Hashem is Kodesh, and if Allah Malaisa offered Shalom Bishma, either through the definition of the or either from the Bishma, the covenant works.
Bill Sims.
Yeah, you did not. My cousin is someone says, so just my cousin is actually to Sunday. Why is it that you are comparing this ultimately again to Sunday? Why not compare all Kabbalahs to Chatas? That would be a very scary comparison. Why? Because what's the halacha by Chatas offered up Bishma?
John Unitas.
It's not good. Covenant is now. So why not say that all Kabbalahs are going? Why do you compare all Kabbalahs to Sunday? Why don't you compare all Kabbalahs to Chatas? Gemara says, no. Hamid Rachmana Oisah. Because remember again, the Torah only is
Randall Cunningham? Bullshit.
I just believe in the star search on my year. And let's see who I might have on this room. And she's incredible. I mean, hello, Christina Aguilera. Oh, I would say beautiful. Remember when you were little and you would like force yourself to cry and stare at yourself in the mirror? I would do that to that song. And I still do. Britney Spears, Freedom Better Once or Twice. And also, Anaya.
They will say, no, why is that pasuk important for us? Because that pasuk is the source of the divine Yeshua. That's why everyone agrees that we check the Chatas Shalom Bishma. What's the halacha? The covenant is totally invalid. Right? It's not affecting the covenant. It's only just not the order. Why? That phrase. Shaka Osa Lachatas. Yomid Rachmona Osa. Hamid Rachmona Osa. Look, let's say some sort of that. We'll just literally just a moment. Catch it up in just a second.
The number one question family friends keep asking me is what time do you really think is going to happen this weekend?
Right, number one.
This is a real lady?
Right, that's number one. Number two, right, the Shema by Kabbalic designation, ownership designation. Both are and where does that apply? All four of the primary sacrificial levels. Shvita, Kabbalah, Zvita, Torah. That was step one. Oh, no, that was really right, so that was step one. Step two. The concept of the Mishnah established that when you go ahead and you offer the covenant Shalom Bishma, the carbon is an effective carbon, but does not count towards the owner. Where do you get that from? So it looks like it all comes down to the little
Damn, bitch.
one This is Royal. Yes, Royal from Gimel Mendal, right? Motzah Svasech HaTishma, Vasisa Hashem Nadaka LaHashem Elokecha. Ultimately, again, the pasuk says, but literally, Moses says, whatever you articulate, make sure to honor it. Make sure to honor it. As you vow to Hashem, you vow, Midovat Hashem Yivad, a big offering like this bread. So what's going on over there? He starts talking about a neder, and then he says to Midovat. That's our case. Our case is where we set out to offer up a particular karka. And then what happens? You change the Shema designation. So in that case, what happens? Your neder becomes a Midovat. Which is another saying that. Which is another saying that ultimately, your karka is still going to be a valid karka, a Midovat, but it's not going to count to your own obligation. So let's say that's the passage. That's the passage. Last piece we got today, ultimately, the chakras is also like Shema Ushma, it totally does not that from chakras slash the shachar also lechatos. The shachar offer up as a chatos, which means they're going to say a chatos has even a more intense being of Shema. They offer up to the Shema. That's what they are. Looks like that's the entire story of just in those three pillars. That's it. But again, we major pillars upon everything that we learn is built on those three pillars. It's good. Let's go back to it. Let's see back. You know what that follows. Let's say that we learn nothing. Let's just put out. They're going to nothing. What's the communist and it's in the room? Actually, Turkish Asham, there were Asli Misa. Not the Misa. So listen, remember when Turkish, when he's on his stomach and he makes messages, they won't see by the Asham. That's what we would by, right? Because the Ashams can't be brought up extremely, nor can be brought up in Neder Yadava. So it seems to be like, why is it fit in the category of other Kavanos that of course the Shema still works as a Kavanos, but ultimately again, but it doesn't count as zero. Let's say you have an so in that respect, interestingly enough, technically speaking, the Asham is brought after that. We know. It's not the Asham after that. It's the value of the Asham that's taken with the agenda. After signing the Kava, so the owner of the Kappas dies, and ultimately goes ahead and what happens? Let the Kappas raise, develop a more, and then go ahead and now let the sell it off. The Kappas is also brought out together. There must still be residual value, but that's not even called the Kappas itself.
Damn, who's this bitch? This isn't even a real person.
Even technically speaking, though, the value of the Kappas is brought.
Really? Lady, I don't believe it. Fake people, fake news. I gotta take a whiz. One of perhaps the biggest whizzes of all time. They call me a whiz kid. Why? Because I'm amazing.
So that's ultimately again by Asham. Allah Almighty again after the burning of the rings. And technically speaking, even if that is omitted, ultimately becomes a sin. At least what I need to do. If you just want to go out, Asham Shmutek Raya, the Shakto Stam Kasha. If you have an Asham that was set aside for grazing, but the owner died, and then what happened? Ultimately, you ended up shefting it without any particular designation. Ultimately, it's kasher. The Gemara says, "Nitak in, lo nitak lo." Only if it was actively set aside for grazing. My time, Omikra, you have yasayah. Because the pasuk says, and therefore it remains in its designation until it is ultimately designated for grazing.
A little bit of everything, girl.
Its stamp ultimately becomes any kasher. But okay. Everyone, a little bit fast, I know. I will say that's right now. So I can't stop that. Let's say that's a halach. When I say again, so just remember the three principles that ultimately, again, I gave you just like a few moments ago. That's the ikra of the entire daf. Those are the takeaways, and those are the principles that we're going to be using going forward. Both sides, tremendous. What a run, what a run. This wasn't even a sprint, this was a marathon. Shkayach, everyone. All right, everyone, Zoom, have a great day. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos. Eretz Yisrael, everyone, such as supposed to be okay with you all the time. You are now the majority, which is tremendous. You don't want to be.
It's,
Let me try. All right, so we'll say good morning, good morning. Let us begin. Taking all the responses for this morning, thank our annual Torah responses. Those who have Eretz Yisrael, we're dedicating all the Shuman and Drashos this year, and the schools of the help us for all the time. So, Torah responses for the month of Elul. Rabbi Ben Goldberg, the son of his parents, Avram Ben Asher Pinchas, Vega Rezel Bas Zelig, and the hope that the Tfilos about giving all of Am Yisrael are answered. And our time with Torah sponsor for the month of Elul.
Oh fuck! Look at that footwork though. So unprecedented shit.
Today's daf is Hay. 5. We are picking up Mamish, top of Dalit of the days. A lot to do today. We're going to get it done. Here it's Hashem. So the says it's all. The Afagab the literally the top. The Afagab the Tarti Lav Dafka. Right to me a dafka. We're supposed to just reorient ourselves for literally a second. So remember again, yesterday's daf, we really had the fantastic sugya on the Aleph discussing the idea how we know that every step of the carbonic process, Shita, Kabbalah, Zrika, Holacha, have to be done what we call L'Shem Kachin, for the purpose of a particular carbon. We then transitioned to the topic of how we know that each of the steps has to be done for the sake of the particular owner. So the Gemara said, essentially we're trying to learn out one from the other, and the Gemara said that there are 4 distinctions. The Afak of talked about dafka, talking near dafka, even though 2 of the distinctions are not necessarily so specific and explicit. 2 of them are Ma'ishna Shin, for example, the Gemara says, Ma'ishna Shin Le'Bailin, the law of the Psul of the Gufal. Remember again, on the one hand, Shin Le'Bailin is not really a psul in the actual carbon itself. In other words, nothing changes in the identity of the carbon. So it's really just a different thought. The Gemara said, you can see the same thing about Shinoi Kol. The change of carbonic designation is also really just a thought and not something physical in the carbon. But let's say by Shinoi carbon, since a change in mental designation ultimately affects the carbon, so too when you have a change in mental designation of the owner, that also negatively impacts the carbon. According to Pinchas Rav Mari, who says that there's shinui bailin even after the death of the owner. I will say again, so we spoke about this before a little bit yesterday, but let's say again, Reuben was going to bring a shlomin, he died. So his children could bring the shlomin on his death, right? The only carbon that you really can't bring posthumously is a chatas or an asham. So other carbon you can bring, you can't bring it posthumously, but the children can bring it. So you could have shinui bailin even after you die. So the Gemara says, Tarti mina ikalamitra. Ultimately, again, there are still 2 other cases which would stand. Ella Amara Ashi Amakra. Sefer Rav is like this. So remember again, we're asking now, how do we know that the din of change the designation should not cognitively change the designation of the actual owner of the carbon during any steps of the carbonic process? Shchita, Kabbalah, Zrika, Holacha, or Holacha, Zrika. So the Pasuk says, "V'nir salo lechaper alav v'lo al chavero." Pretty simple drasha. Pasuk says, "It shall be accepted for him to atone for him and not his friend." Who's the him? Who's the him? The owner of the carbon. So from there you see, you cannot change the designation of the carbon. Awesome. Is that what that pasuk is used for? How you going to look at the side? You just follow the drasha. What's the drasha? The near slow the katra alav. That same pasuk, Rabbi Shimon Omer, as sha'alav chai b'achri Yisrael, ve'as she'enu alav ein chai b'achri Yisrael. That teaches us a different halacha b'esai. That what happens if you designate a carbon and ultimately something happens to the carbon. If you took
Look at
personal
this
responsibility
athleticism.
as
It's
sha'alav,
really unprecedented.
if it's upon you, ultimately, for example, a neder, right? A neder is a person says, Hare alai, I hereby take upon this obligation upon me. If something then happens to the carbonic animal, you are obligated to go ahead and replace it. On the other hand, if you bring in a dava, a gift offering, and a dava is Hare zu, this animal is a carbon. Well, if something happens to the animal, then what? Then halacha l'maisa again, you are not obligated to go ahead and replace it. But he's the paradini, my kind of reason. Even the alai, because when you say alai, it is as if literally again you're putting that animal on your shoulders and you are obligated for it. But actually, even so low, lechaper kama. But actually, dashing the first part of the pasuk, the so low. He's not dashing halal. So the Lord says, it turns out that halal for the pasuk is always teaching me two Allah. Number one, the so low lechaper teaches me that during every step of the Kabbanic process, the processes must be done for the sake of the intended owner. Now that's the chatila. Obviously, as you've seen, with the evet, the carbon still may be kosher depending on the carbon. The last phrase, Allah, or the last word, Allah, teaches me that when I take a neder, if something happens to the animal, I am obligated to replace it. If it's in a dava, ultimately I'm not obligated to replace it. The difference between a neder and a dava, a neder is hare alai. I take it upon me. If I take it upon me, if something happens to the animal, I have a replacement obligation. The dava, hare zu. Something happens to the animal, I'm not obligated to replace it. Incredible. Sha'ashkech on zika as well. So it's interesting enough, this entire exercise tells me fine. So now I know that I have to check the animal for the sake of the intended owner. The Gemara says, Kabbalah, Ashkechan Zvika. So now I know checking and Zvika. Kabbalah 9. What about Kabbalah? What about Kabbalah? Zechikri, my relation is Zvika. Switch is Zvika and Zvika. Mavi, Zvika, Shekin, Avodah, First of all, Shvita and Zvika are sacrificial rights that there's liability for if you do it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore you can't run out from there. Interestingly enough, we learn it out from the ram of the Nazir. It's one of the Kabbalos that the Nazir brings at the end of his Nazirite vow. Interesting. The pasuk says, "He shall do the aisle zevach shlomim." What does this mean? Shete asiyaso l'shem shlomim, teaching us that when the name of the Nazir is offered, it must be offered up for the sake of shlomim. Now, if I don't need that to teach me about carbonic designation itself, because we've already learned that, ultimately, use it to teach me about owner designation, that there must be explicit owner designation for this stage of the carbon.
Folks, look at this athleticism. Folks, look at this athleticism. Have you ever seen anybody so athletic in your entire life?
So ultimately, again, the cloud
Well,
itself is going to be limited by the prat.
look at this athleticism.
Maybe only teaches me shvita and nothing else. If it would have been phrased, he shall do a shlomim, as a carbon, then I would agree with that. Hashem the tzit ya'aseh zeva shlomim. This is very interesting. Just that phraseology makes it essentially an interrupted klal u'klal. The word zeva ultimately breaks up the pasuk. Klal she'eino molei ain't done it also the klal u'klal. And any klal that is not complete is not darshan as a klal u'klal. Rabbi says the olam darin.
Damn, bitch.
It does work.
What's this called?
The Lashem at the end makes it actually a 12 u'klal to 12. Although you're not going to be different, but Rabbi and how could that be? Because the first 12 doesn't mirror the last 12. ultimately, again, the first cloud, ultimately, again, seems to indicate that anything involved in the carbon, even not the primary avodas, has to be done with Shema. But ultimately, Kol Hashem, the first cloud ultimately again indicates to us the only sacrificial rites. Now, Basra, Kol Hashem, the last cloud seems to indicate that anything involved in the carbon, even the spilling out of the leftover blood, ultimately again has to be the Shema. So even if you want to dash the Kalupa to cloud, the two bookends don't match. I think once it's Hakar Bishmo, the Cloud Yukati Jarish Gagam. That's okay, because again, you see what Bishmo, they would dash the Kalupa to cloud even like this. Even if the first cloud and the second cloud didn't exactly mirror each other, it would still dash. So once it's Kalupa to cloud, yeah. So remember again, the cloud is there, ultimately to help modify the clouds. Just like the cloud is talking about one of the sacrificial rites. Has to be done with Shema. So to any part of the sacrificial of the Chayav and Allah B'chutz. So again, if you do it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so maybe the din of Lishma, Shchita Uzrita in, that would apply to Shchita, slaughtering, Shchita, sprinkling, but Kabbalah B'Halakha, well, but technically speaking, Kabbalah B'Halakha done outside of the Beis Hamikdash, ultimately again, would not be problematic. We also say the prat maybe only refers to something that needs to be done in order inside the Kartar of the and only applies to katos that are done in the Pinius, on the inside of the Kodesh. Shlita the Kabbalah is Shlita Lo. That would include Shlita and Kabbalah, but not Zrika. So the truth is the drasha can go either way. What do you do when you can do the drasha either way? Therefore, essentially accept both drashas. Listen, we know another possibility is kata bakata teiku and no stop. Each one of us is teiku over here is not a classic teiku. What it means is each one is able to stand on its own, and therefore each are correct. Okay, so another possibility is Zrika, Midrash possible also that Zrika learned that the din of Zrika Lishma is learned from the drasha of the Rashi as we saw before. So Ashkif on Al Nazir, you want to Shar Shlomi Noah. So now I know about El Nazir. What about the rest of General Shlomin? If he came with Elis and El Nazir, maybe you're still not from El Nazir. Mali El Nazir Shekin Yesh Imayan Shlomin Achirim. El Nazir is different because the other books of this is included in that. Rashi says, Sheba'im Imo Chatos Va'olah. There's a Chatos in the older that accompanies the ayah of the Nazir. Imke Mitzvah Shalmei. My Shlomim, why did it say Shlomim like that, like in the plural? Kol Shlomim, comes to include all Shlomim, that all Shlomim have the din of Lishma. First line, Ashkef on Shlomim, Shar Kol Kachim. So now I know that all Shlomim have the din ultimately again of Lishma. What about the rest of Kabbalah? If we came in the other from Shlomim, maybe I don't have from Shlomim. My Shlomim is to un Smicha, Unisakim, Usnufash Chazei Yishom. 1 second. The Shlomim are different. Why? Because all Shlomim require ultimately Smicha, meaning on the carbon, the second modernization, Smicha, and a waving of the leg and the chest. The subbeginning species learn of all Kabbalas, Allah Makra, Zos, Hatorah, Viola, Leminfa, Ulakatas, Ulasham, Velamilim, Velazeva Hashlamim. The Kishin Hakasa Lishlamim. The Torah equates all Kabbalas to Shlamim. Shlamim bein Shinei Kodesh bein Shinei Bailim Aba'ina Lishma. Af Kol bein Shinei Kodesh bein Shinei Bailim Ba'in Lishma. It's how Allah says. So that's it. Therefore, the Gemara, once you've established that ultimately again the din of Lishma applies to Shlamim, the Torah then goes ahead and equates all other Kabbalas to Shlamim. And just like Shlamim require Lishma, what's the number again? There are two types of Lishma. There's what's called Lishma for Kodesh, and the Shema for Bayit. The Shema for Kodesh means that when you offer up a carbon, you have to have in mind, you have to intend for the particular type of carbon, right? Just like Shema needs it, all other carbonos need it, so too, you have to have the Shema for Bayit, ownership of Shema. You have to offer up the carbon with the intention for the particular owner. Incredible. Amo, hey, the Shachar Lavu, Shalom Shema. So let's say some other. So that's the end. That's the end. Now, what we've successfully established is that there is, again, this twofold lishma. You have to have what we call carbonic lishma and ownership lishma. You have to have in mind during all of the avodas, shvita, kabbalah, zika, holacha. You have to have in mind for the particular carbon, and you have to have in mind for the particular owner in each of those steps as well. That's what we've established in the last block. Now you might ask a very interesting question. So the Gemara says, well, one second. The Ema, here from the Shachar Lavu Shalom Lishma, is, although you're supposed to have Lishma, what's the halacha if you don't have Lishma? What's the halacha? The carbon is kosher, but it doesn't count towards the owner's obligation. The Gemara says, why? If we just established that Lishma is a necessary carbonic criteria, both for the sake of the carbon, for carbonic designation and for ownership, so why don't we say if you don't have Lishma, then what? The carbon's possible. It's totally no good. So the Gemara says, the carbon should be possible once you go and offer it up to Lishma. So this is very interesting. So the Pasuk says, so whatever you utter, right, make sure to honor the utterances of your lips. And you shall go ahead and do as you vowed. And both at the end of the Pasuk is that the gift offering that you spoke out with your mouth. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. The pasuk itself is confusing. What's confusing about it? Because the pasuk begins by talking about ultimately again a neder, and then at the end of the pasuk it switches over to a nedava. So what's going on over here? So much time nedava neder. Why is it calling nedava? In the pasuk it's a neder. Here we go. Kamashna Darkas CC in there, you're not even a dava. This is a very important halacha. That if you executed on what you intended to do, then it fulfills your neder. But if not, it's in a dava. Or in other words, what the pasuk is teaching means like this. If I offered up a carbon to the intended purpose, i.e. the shema, then the carbon is going to count for its intended purpose. But if for some reason you have a deviation in the shema, the carbon will still be effective, albeit in a different way. It won't be the neder, it won't be the obligatory offering that you were going to bring, but it'll count as in the dava. So from here we see that if you lack the shema, the carbon itself is still a valid carbon, but does not go ahead and satisfy your particular obligation. Again, so let's say, so one more time. When you're going to bring a carbon, ultimately go ahead and honor the carbon by bringing it to the correct designation. As you promised, as you said you were going to do. But if you did not do that, the end of the pasuk says, right, that's only from the dava, I should be back to the people. It becomes an adava, it becomes a gift offering. So therefore, again, still kosher, but doesn't count towards your obligation. Incredible. So what I say, interestingly enough, now it appears that we have two psukim. Gemara earlier quoted a different pasuk. So it appears now that we have two different psukim to highlight this same idea. Gemara says, why do you need both? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you what, because of Rahman and Motzah, if the pasuk where it just said Motzah, on top of hey, I would not have known ultimately again what the pasuk of Yosef is referring to. Because of Rahman and Zos HaTorah, if I would have just written the pasuk of Zos HaTorah, I would have said ultimately again, when there is a lack of lishma, perhaps the carbon is possible. In other words, that point does not count towards my obligation, but what I say is an invalid carbon. So interestingly enough, the essential transaction is like this. The first pasuk of Torah really teaches me the idea that lishma is really necessary. But from that pasuk, I would have thought that the absence of lishma fundamentally invalidates the carbon. Comes the pasuk of Moses Vasecha, it teaches me that no, the absence of lishma does not invalidate the carbon. In other words, the carbon doesn't count towards my obligation, but it's still a valid carbon. Incredible. Shmuel says, fine. Rami Ishtakish, Ohi being Midrasha Omakshi. So Ishtakish was lying on his stomach in the base measures, and he went ahead and raised the following question. This is how he was positioned in the base measures, and he asked the following question. In Shirin Haim Yirsu, the in Maratzin Lama Boy. So this is you should know why you're on his stomach. There's a halacha that says that many people who live in the base measures, are allowed to take like short naps inside of the base measures. People think that this applies to Balabatim also, but it is not true. Actually, some are not here to take long naps. Like, it's not true. So come to come in who live in this, live in these measures, so they have the ability to. So it could very well be that what's happening over here is that Bahi is laying down, so to speak, for a moment. But what's incredible to see is that even if he's lying down, so let's say, well, it's the person that has a problem. Not being able to Torah. It's the preoccupation with Torah. Preoccupation with Torah. And even if a Bahi is going ahead, and catch a few moments, say, just to relax that for a few moments, even then, he's still awesome for Torah. He's lying on his stomach, but at the end of the day, he's still awesome for Torah. It's like beautiful. So you have the following question. In Shirin Yirsu, in Imratsim Lamaboy. So Abaye says, this doesn't make sense. Right? If you tell me like, I'm sorry. So this doesn't make sense. Why? Because if at the end of the day, the carbon is a valid carbon, then it should count towards the owner's obligation. And if it doesn't count towards the owner's obligation, then it shouldn't be a valid carbon. So it's like he's asking, I don't think either a carbon is good or it's not good. And if it's good, it should be good for everything. And if it's not good, it should be invalid for everything. So she was, we do find this designation by Karbanis. That sometimes a carbon could be a valid carbon, but it doesn't count towards the obligation of the owner. For example, there are certain carbonos that are brought posthumously. So obviously, a posthumous carbon is a valid carbon, but obviously doesn't count towards the obligation of the owner. Why not? You understand? So the Gemara says, it's not. You learn Haisha Shevia Chasas Umisa. Supposed to be still by a woman who's bringing her kabbanos after child. Remember again. Let's say so Rachel gave birth, she brought her chasas, then she died. So what's that Rachel? Ultimately again her children, her orphans, could bring her Olah. So the Gemara says, interestingly enough, that halacha lines again. So an Ola is one of the childbirth kabbanos. Nice halacha lines again. What do you see from here? Her children can bring her carbon. Now, obviously, what's the nature of that carbon? It's a valid carbon. Does it work for Rachel? No, Rachel's dead. So the Gemara says, Ola only. So the Rabbi Yersh Chatos. Now, obviously, this only works by all different for the Chatos. For example, she brought her Ola and then died. Her children can't bring her Chatos. Like there is no such thing as a posthumous Chatos. So we'll say, but the point of it, so what do you see? You see that same sluggish, what do you see? You see here, there is a concept that a carbon could be a valid carbon, but doesn't count towards the owner's obligation. So listen, so Rich Sluggish says, I'll agree with you with Ola.
I can't disagree with one thing that.
What about an Asham, for example? So what about an Asham? So Asham can't be brought after death. Yes, the Rich Sluggish says, our Mishnah, you can go ahead and bring in Asham, right? If somebody, if Reuben had to bring an Asham, but he had a mind for an Olah, the halacha is that what? That the carbon is a valid carbon that doesn't count towards his obligation. I don't understand that. I'm already.
Their intros are so long.
I'm going to respond to that. No, there's another sheet. Rabbi Elazar Omer Ata Asham. Rabbi Elazar says that an Asham is treated like a chatos, meaning that an Asham is actually an example of a carbon that if brought shalom lishma is totally invalid. The Shlokish gets upset. Amar zer she'omen alav adam gadolu. This Rabbi Eliezer, this is what people say is a very common talk. What kind of answer is that? The Gemara says, Kamina ana mishka shlema. Va'at amat li Rabbi Elazar. I'm asking a Tanakama. Like the Tanakama has a very special any covenant to bring small, the covenant is down, but it doesn't count towards the owner.
Some secrets away.
Don't
Right. Because your kiss is on my list. Because your kiss is on my list. Because your kiss is on my list. One that's in July. Your kiss is on my list. Because your kiss, I can't resist. Dog. What, can you not see I'm busy here? Dog, do you think that my life revolves around you? Okay, well, you're not going to get that right now, especially not with that attitude. I hope you're having a good day, my friend. Take care.
What you will say, by the way, is a profound idea. In life, sometimes it is better to try to answer your own questions and not wait for others, and figure it out yourself. But like most things in life, learn to become self-reliant. Even when it comes to great life lessons, you should seek out details, you seek out insight from others, of course. More often than not, if we're honest, all the answers I need to the great complexities of my life, especially when they're personalistic questions, the answers are inside of me. I just have to be brave enough to look into it. So the Gemara says as follows. Here's the answer. Moses, Masako, Hayin, Davar, Neder, Pidu, El. The answer is as we saw before. The pasuk is so now. The pasuk says Moses, Masako, to his word. Vashisha Kasher Lagarta. The pasuk is bring the carbon. Right? To literally again honor your right. Do what you're supposed to do. And if you do what you're supposed to do, bring it.
Prove it.
Then it'll be ultimately a